Hi everyone, this is Robert. Welcome to Deep Geek Live. This is my pre-show for episode 4 of House of the Dragon. And my very special guest today is Mark from Sir Hans. Mark, do you want to say hi?
What's up, everyone? Thanks for having me on, Robert. It's been a minute. This is gonna be a lot of fun. This show is amazing.
It is really good. I was going to ask you, you're enjoying it, right?
Definitely. Tonight's episode is gonna be crazy.
Yeah, I think we've got a lot to look forward to. But those who don't know you, do you want to just quickly introduce your channel? Where can people find you on the internet?
Right. You can find me on YouTube at Sir Hunt's Reviews. Sir with an E. Right. I'll be typing in the chat, so you could just click on my name if you want. But I do mostly, really only just House of the Dragon videos right now. Probably going to be working in some Winds of Winter stuff, but yeah, you can find me over there.
Excellent. Well, I'm really looking forward to it. Just for so everyone knows, this is, as all of my live streams are during this season and also the Rings of Power, this is a charity stream in aid of Alzheimer's care, support and research. If you are enjoying the show, if you're enjoying these live streams, if you do have a little bit of money to spare, this is the way I would love you to say thank you. Just there is a link there for you somewhere on your screen. Whatever you've got would be absolutely fantastic. It's an incredibly worthwhile cause. Also, James Brooke, thank you. Welcome to the Members Club. But Mark, why don't we just start off just as a high level? You said you're enjoying it. I know you're enjoying it. We were talking a little bit actually before we went on air about how after season 8 of Game of Thrones, I think the whole of the fandom were a little bit down, but are you feeling like I am, that everybody's now really on board? This is what we were wanting all this time.
Yeah, I think this show has done two things. It's like it's sort of like wiped the bitterness, right? There's like I like season 8. I think most people could probably find stuff they liked about it, and then the same can be said about stuff they didn't like, right? But this show is like wipe the taste, right? We've got Ryan Condal, I think is how you say it. I've been saying his name wrong for the longest, and I heard him say it in an interview, and I'm like, oh man, that sounds silly. I think it's Ryan Condal. I don't know. Anyway, but we've got him show running, and it's very clear that he wants to devote his life to this show, right? So it's like I've seen rhetoric change. Like people are still teasing it, but it's like in good spirit, right? And then the other thing is that I think it's given hope to anybody who might have been, the Song of Ice and Fire books only fan, and then just like did not like the show at all, right? This show probably gave them hope that hey, it's a possibility to make some really good content with the whole universe. It just depends on who's helming it and how involved George is.
Yeah, I think his involvement is pretty crucial here. And what I'm loving, I have to say, is the way that the show is sticking very closely to the books, but still making a few changes that make us look at things in a slightly different way. I know you've been, you basically got the books on repeat on Audible, but it's just like the amount of times that there's been something that's allowed, I mean, we'll pick up on this in a little bit. I've got some questions about this, but it allowed us to look at characters in a slightly different way. Certainly there are some characters like Alicent, Damon, that I now view in a different way to how I viewed them when I was just reading Fire and Blood. And I think that's they've not changed the characters. They've just shown us a slightly different side to them, which I think it really works for me. We've got a whole load of questions that I want to get through from my patrons. I'm going to try and pick up as many questions from the chat as we're going through as I possibly can. But I want to start off with this one about the Dragonrider bond. This is from 444 saying, I can't recall any Dragonrider who developed a bond with more than one dragon. I wonder if Viserys couldn't make a bond with another dragon after Balerian's death, or if he didn't want to. Now, Viserys is the character. I've said this before. George R. R. Martin has said he is the character that he looks at the acting from Paddy Considine and he thinks this has added an extra layer to the character that he wrote. And I think that's high praise. But do you think, Mark, this adds something to our understanding of why he didn't ride a dragon again? Because you're absolutely right, 444 dragons can bond with more than one rider, but we have never had a rider who had more than one dragon. And Viserys was riding Balerion the Black Dread, biggest, mightiest dragon ever. Balerion died, and he never rode a dragon again. Why do you think that is?
Okay, so two reasons. One, Daenerys says maybe it's in the Dance of Dragons, might be in a feast, but she specifically says no Dragonrider has ever ridden two different dragons, right? That's not the quote verbatim, but she says that. It's like an unestablished law that Georgia said. And then also Aegon, this is book spoilers. Aegon 2, is that okay?
We can do book spoilers, no show spoilers, but book spoilers are encouraged.
Okay, cool. So Aegon 2 eventually gets propositioned, hey, can you get another one? Can you ride another dragon? And like the idea just kind of gets pushed away, right? So I think dragons themselves, since they outlive humans, they're above men, right? They can do things like take on multiple riders, but never when the previous rider is still alive, right? Maybe, but I don't think that's ever happened. Like there's never been a case where a dragon rider is injured, still alive, but injured, and then someone else rides their dragon. Usually it's after they die. So the bond probably relinquishes itself when the rider dies, kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think so the twist that I think the show has had on this, which is the kind of thing that we're going to be thinking about a lot afterwards, is so Viserys in the show, he came out with a line, I can't remember whether it was episode 2 or 3, he came out with this line about how dragons, this was a force we should never have meddled with, or something along those lines. And this is a weird thing for a Targaryen to say. Targaryens are normally hugely pro-dragon. He's the guy who rode the biggest and greatest dragon in Westerosi history, and here he is saying, yeah, we shouldn't have messed with these dragons, which does suggest perhaps he's not even tried bonding with another dragon. It's not a matter of him not being able to. Maybe it's just that he didn't want to. I mean, I don't know. I think we don't have an answer to this one yet. We definitely have the answer, as you say, that a dragon rider cannot have two at the same time, and we definitely know that it's true about the reverse. But I'm getting my words mixed up here. Apologies, but with the situation we've got here, where a dragon dies, does that mean that the dragon rider can try and bond with someone else? Maybe not.
I don't think so. I think it's a one-time thing. For a dragon, no, they're different. They're above that, right? They don't have the same rules that we have. But for a rider, it's a one and done kind of thing. Once the connection is established and broken in either the dragon's death or the rider's death, I just don't think it's possible. If it was, Daenerys wouldn't have had that line where like no other dragon rider has taken, you know what I mean? Like when she's basically being asked, so it is in the Dance of Dragons, right? So she's thinking like, okay, who else would ride my other dragons, right? It might be when she's talking with Quentin. And they're like, he's like, this what makes him want to go try to tame a dragon right at the end of the book. Yeah. But she basically like cements that idea. Like, no, I don't think a rider has ever had two dragons at once. Like she basically says that. It's like, no, it's probably too much for the person to take on, because like we don't know what goes on in a dragon rider's head or in a dragon's head when they're first establishing the connection. But we know from Fire and Blood that like, even if you have some dragon blood, the dragon can still just be like, nah. So I think it has to be sort of written in the stars. You kind of have to, you were meant to do it. I don't know. Maybe I'm sounding silly here, but
no. I think there is definitely an element of that sometimes we hear reports of like a Targaryen trying to bond with a dragon and it doesn't seem to work, or somebody with Targaryen blood or Valyrian blood, it doesn't seem to work. But sometimes it seems to be first time. They just climb on board and that's it. Let's move on to a question about Alicent. Actually, Mattia in the chat, I see, saying the show has done the incredible job of making me love Alicent, which is impressive because I did not like her at all in the books, which I think a lot of people have had this kind of thought with Alicent. Alejandro Martinez saying, this is from one of my patrons, I like what they've done with Alicent thus far and appreciate what looked like her defending Rhaenyra in the episode 4 preview. Knowing this is a story about a civil war, I'm assuming that Alicent can't remain the courtly noble lady forever. Do you think they're portraying her this way now for contrast later? I think this is a really interesting, because I agree. I had not expected to like Alicent at all, but here I've suddenly got sympathy for her, and I think that is deliberate. But what do you think, Mark? Is is this just warming us up so that then they can like pull the rug away and then we'll hate her in the second half of the show or of the season? Or are they deliberately wanting us to have some kind of sympathy towards her?
Well, yeah, because she's gonna, even though people are like, oh yeah, we're gonna hate her, you're still gonna love her again at other times after you start to hate her. That's how these characters are. They go back and forth all the time. And to be honest, I'm not even making this up. You can go back and watch videos of mine from like 2 years ago. I've always had sympathy for her because she's just carrying the old king's tradition. Like, I'm not trying to get too far off subject, but Alicent spent time with him, right? It's like she's usurping the throne by putting her son in power, right? But also like, she's kind of right. So I knew because of that, they're gonna make her sentimental. So I've always, from like the first episode, I've always been like, oh yeah, and then once we see her, how she's being portrayed, obviously the younger version, very sympathetic. But definitely, to answer your question, for sure, that's why they're trying to set her up as being this like, and I actually said that. I was like, in one of my breakdown videos, I was like, I feel like I like her so much more than I ever thought possible. And it's going to make me probably be on the greens for a large majority of the show. Like, I'm going to be flipping back in the episode. And I think that's why they want us to do that. They're setting it up because they know it's like that's what makes for good TV.
It does. And I think so for those who have read the book, I think I don't know anyone who read the book without going, well, obviously Team Black. But now it's like I can now start to see Otto. We'll come on to in a moment, but with Alicent, it's you see she's being used as much as anything else. She's trying to do the right thing as far as she's concerned. She again and again, actually, we see her trying to mend fences between Viserys and Rhaenyra. She's there trying to make them talk to each other. She seems to be like holding out olive branches. You actually think, you know what, the people who are a little bit annoying here at times are people like Rhaenyra, who is she's holding a grudge here over, yes, her best friend married her dad, kind of weird situation, but still, like, she's the one who's not wanting to sort of build any bridges here. So go on.
Did you see they had two of those cut scenes? One of them was their wedding, Alicent and Viserys' wedding, and then another one was her, like, Rhaenyra dressing Alicent. And it was like callbacks to the first episode when she's giving her the cape or whatever. I feel like those should have been in there, but they got cut. And like it, I mean, like, obviously respect the editor, but that would have added even more. You know what I mean? To the like, oh, this is awkward as hell. Didn't we just couple episodes? Didn't we just switch? I don't know. It was interesting.
Actually, dynamic. Chase, I had another of my questions from my patrons. Chase was saying, have you seen the pictures about the deleted scenes? I hope that they release them later. I definitely do. For those who, if you missed it, then I think there are a couple. I think they've just released some stills from them rather than the actual the videos themselves.
Yeah.
But one of them is definitely this. So this is the wedding between Viserys and Alicent, and as you say, you get that moment when Rhaenyra is dressing Alicent, which is a complete flip to what happened at the end of episode 1. So I'm quite relaxed about this. I think it looks like it was a good scene, but for whatever reason they decided maybe it slowed the flow of what was going on. I don't know. You kind of trust, because the episodes have been so good, you kind of trust whatever editing process went on. And it's probably worth saying this is normal. This does happen all the time with when they film things that they eventually decide not to use.
Yeah,
and it's not a sign that anything went wrong. It was just when you go sort of from writing something to actually seeing it in front of you as a showrunner, then it is a very different thing, and you do get to see the whole episode and actually, you know what, maybe we don't need that bit after all.
Yeah, or for timing, pacing, anything. It could be any of those. Like the episode's too long, or it just kind of slows it down. It wasn't quick enough.
Yeah, so I'm relaxed about this. I think it's just one of those things, and I think we're sort of starting to move beyond the sort of the DVD box set age, but this is exactly the kind of thing that we would get in the DVD box set, is the deleted scenes. So I'm sure they will be releasing them somewhere in some way.
Yeah, probably on YouTube. Like after
Yeah,
the
they
show.
might do actually. Yeah, they could well do. Yeah, just bung it on YouTube. That would be quite a good idea. Kelly Summers, this is in the chat saying, do any dragons besides Balerion and maybe Sheepstealer survive to die of old age rather than violence or poisoning? Yeah, good question. So there are a couple that survive the dance that we've got. So Sheepstealer is definitely there. Cannibal is also one who, as far as we are aware, died just of old age, hidden in a cave somewhere that nobody dares approach. So there are a few. Most dragons seem to die in battle or sort of old age. Have you got any other examples there you can think of at the top of your head?
Silverwing, Red Lake.
Yes.
Just kind of disappears. But that's the thing. If the dragons don't ever, like, they just keep getting bigger, maybe they're still alive. So maybe they're still out there. I don't know. For the show.
Yeah. I think so. This is where Fire and Blood Part 2, or Blood and Fire, as I think George R. Martin is going to call it. This is where it'll be one of the things which will be really interesting, is that where we left the plot is with 3 or possibly 4 dragons alive still. We've got Cannibal, who's probably dead, and we've got the 2, the Silverwing and
Morning, I think.
Morning, who are still around. Morning is the only one that's actually being ridden at the moment. So that's the situation, and we know that within a few years they're all gone. So that's part of the equation. Is why aren't the new dragons being hatched and surviving? Hashtag Maester Conspiracy. I've done videos on this, but the other issue is, what about those
people that deny that?
dragons?
Can you believe there's people that deny that the Maesters aren't up to something? That's crazy.
I mean, I think there are 2 options. I think the other option is some kind of strange magical thing. That's which we haven't had anything
with Viserys. Is that what you mean?
Well, yeah. So the other option is that we know that there's a link between dragons and the sort of ambient level of magic out in the world, in some way, in the sense that when Dany's dragons hatched, suddenly there were magicians could do greater feats elsewhere in the world, and things were going on. Could there be some sort of link the other way around? Could something have happened elsewhere that reduces the kind of ambient level of magic in the world, which meant that dragons didn't hatch and grow? We haven't heard anything specific about that time, but it's possible. But I think the overwhelming likelihood is that this was the Maesters, because they had the motive, means, and opportunity to do it. So why wouldn't it be them?
Yeah, I think if it's possible, you know how we have a winter that comes after the dance, all the dragons died. Winter comes, so maybe the dragons, we had Balerion taking Aerys area back to supposedly Valyria, getting the fireworms in her body. Maybe dragons, after like all of them die and the fire part of the magic in the world succeeds, they go back to Valyria to like just sort of wait it out, kind of like what some people think the White Walkers are doing up north or something. I don't know. I feel like I'm being silly.
No. This is the kind of thing, and one of the things I'm really looking forward to after the show has finished, and we're going to have, 18 months maybe till season 2 comes out, is we get a chance to actually digest all of this extra and new information that we get, because we've had so many little drops of information coming that we can actually start analyzing. I mean, just Viserys, just in about a 1-minute mini monologue when he was talking about old Valyria, dropped 3 or 4 new bits of information that we didn't know about. Blood magicians,
he's like, the blood magicians were right here, and they all was like, whoa, what? I went back, and then I'm watching it. I'm like, where were they at, dude? Tell us again. And then I'm thinking also George was probably like, yes, the blood mages, and he's like telling Ryan this stuff, and there's probably so much. Oh, sorry.
No, exactly, and that's the thing that I cannot wait for, is the chance, because at the moment we're watching one episode and then immediately the next episode comes along, and a week later, and to actually have a period of time where we can actually go back and start trying to draw together all the dots. What about Aegon's prophecy? What about old Valyria? What have we learned about dragons? All of these different things we can actually start, and the theory videos hopefully will start coming out. I've seen already, I mentioned it a couple of times there, people are starting to draw sort of a few lines now between things like, if you have got this prophecy about, the Targaryen kings and queens believe that they're there to protect everyone against some kind of cold wintry thing from the north. Have you noticed, and this was Archmaester Emma on Red Mice at Play blog, have you noticed the link between when it gets winter and Targaryen kings doing weird things? Because there is a link between the two.
They get like a full moon sickness kind of thing. Like,
well, yeah, it's just like when you dig it, the obvious answer, the obvious one is like when Rhaegar went off and captured Lyanna and did all of that kind of captured, you know what I mean, and did all of that kind of stuff. There was a massive winter happening. It was like the full spring, and then winter came back, and it was really bad, and there was icicles hanging off of the Red Keep and things like that. What if actually what happens is that the Targaryens get scared when a big winter comes, and they think this is it? Particularly if there is a focus on prophecy as someone like Rhaegar, they think this is the moment. I've got to do something big. I've got to do. And then you go back through Targaryen history, you see the amount of times when we get told and winter started coming, or it was a bad winter, and then a Targaryen king goes off and does some crazy stuff. There might well be a link. That's the kind of thing that we'll only start when we get a chance to really sit down and think about all of this, that we will start to be able to draw a few of these lines, which I'm sure, as you say, I'm sure George R. Martin has been thinking about.
Yeah, it's crazy that I saw people were commenting on my video saying like this kind of came out of nowhere. I feel like they're shoehorning this in there. No, it isn't. Mm-hmm. It's called A Song of Ice and Fire. There's equal parts, and the magic fire system, though there's no magic system, but the way fire magic works is very different, but also the exact same that ice magic works. I don't know.
Yeah. Let's go to, we were starting to talk about Alicent. So, and I said we'll come back to Otto in just one moment, because the other part of Alejandro's question was saying the showrunners have said they want the characters to be grey, but I think the actors have commented that Otto is mostly black and white, perhaps more black than white. And just as an aside there, yes, when the actors were asked who's the bad guy, most of them were saying, yeah, it's Otto. In episode 3, we saw the head of House Hightower proclaiming Aegon his grace and the second of his name, and instruct Otto that he has to convince Viserys to name baby Aegon heir. Is this to show that even Otto isn't pulling all the strings? Then maybe he's not so black and white after all. So this comes to sort of a question about the Hightowers and what's their game, really. I think it's right. I think that they are trying to, on the show, they are trying to show that yes, Otto is being very manipulative, but it's maybe not just him. This is the Hightowers. I did a video collaboration with History of Westeros a couple of weeks ago about the possibility of a grand Hightower Maester Septon conspiracy around all of this. Is there one here? We always talk about a Maester conspiracy, but could there be one going on here right in front of our eyes? What do you think, Mark? Do you think there's anything in this? Do you think that this isn't just, as we previously thought, many of us, this is Otto being ambitious? Is there something bigger going on here? Is House Hightower as a whole doing something?
All right, so I'm going to pull from the Song of Ice and Fire books, right? So Sam in A Feast for Crows, when he's at the Citadel, he starts to figure out, this is what I'm supposed to do, right? He meets this guy, long story short, Maester Marwyn, and he's like, I'm going to go to Daenerys myself. This is my leading red. This is why the Maesters are conspiring for sure, right? So Marwyn tells Sam if the gray rats, basically that's what I call them, right? If the maesters go to Daenerys, they'll probably kill her dragons too. So I'm gonna go do it. Marwyn says I want to go do it because he wants to help Daenerys, right? And then the whole time Sam is making his way to the Citadel, Maester Aemon keeps saying I have to go to Daenerys, I have to help her, probably because he knows he's been kept at the wall because he's a Targaryen, because the maesters don't like the Targaryens, right? As far as the Maesters working with the High Towers and there being like a big conspiracy, for sure. The High Tower, Old Town, is called the Old Town because it's the oldest town in Westeros, right? So they have the world's knowledge. They have what went on before the Andals came over. They had what went on between the first, most likely, I'm guessing, right? That's not confirmed. But so they have that information. And because they have that information, they realize, oh, there's got to be a balance in power. No dragons over here in Westeros. That means the White Walkers won't come. So maybe the White Walkers only come because the dragons come and they have to like work it all out. But another main reason is because also when Arya is in Bravos, right? And she's being in Arya doesn't have any. Does she have any POV chapters in the Dance of Dragons? I don't remember.
She does, yeah. Only one or two, I think, but yeah.
Right. So we figure out in A Feast for Crows that there's like the Faceless Men for sure have this council where they're plotting stuff in Bravos and they're controlling things. And then we find out that one of them is at the Citadel. So there's a council of Faceless Men that are like, you know, probably higher up than regular acolytes or whoever, right? So that we saw behind the scenes there. When Sam's at the Citadel and wins a winner, we're probably going to see, oh, there's probably some maesters and get more on what Marwyn was talking about. So I think it's all confirmed. It just, for the show, they have to do it a different way because, you know, they skipped all that in the main show. So for the new show, they have to make it more obvious. And I think they are poisoning Viserys. I think it is like a red herring, like, oh, well, it's very clear something. They like look at each other before the king says something. Like they're like, it literally seems like Melos is preventing Sir Otto from saying certain things. He's like, what? Why did you say your daughter? Hang on a second. Yes, yeah. You should marry Lena. You know what I mean? Like he's like playing this role. He's like, yeah, you should marry Lena, not the High Towers. They're not dragon blood. You know what I mean? I don't know.
Yeah, I think so. I'm gonna throw something at you, which was it not literally? You know what I mean? But which I certainly noticed when I was reading Fire and Blood. But when I was chatting with Aziz about this, and we were coming up with that video, it really became very obvious, particularly in the way they presented it on the show. It's about the Great Council of 101. That scene we had right at the very beginning of episode 1, when Viserys gets chosen to be king. And when you go back through Fire and Blood, you think, okay, so how did this High Council come about? It got suggested by a maester. Okay. And then who was in charge of the process there? The maesters. Who counted all the results? The maesters. Who gave the final results to the king? The maesters. The only people who know all of these votes are the maesters. And one thing which really struck me when I thought this is a bit odd, but I just sort of kind of like went past it when I was reading Fire and Blood the first time, was we hear that apparently the vote was more than 20-1 in favor of Viserys. Now that's like over 95% in favor of Viserys, which this is like dictator territory. This is the kind of thing that when they come up with pretend ballots, they say, oh, but everyone loves me, 95+%. This is huge.
You got 40 million people to vote for you, and there's only 3 million people.
and it's like, then you go, and the rest of it is basically saying, oh yeah, but so obviously House Velaryon didn't vote that way. House Stark didn't. House Baratheon didn't. They're 2 of the 7 great houses. House Blackwood didn't. House Celticar didn't. House Manderley didn't. House Dustin didn't. And it's just this list of these people who didn't. And you just say, so how is it 95% if you get all of these huge houses voting again? So it just does not seem to add up. So for me, the Maester conspiracy is to put him onto the throne.
Yes, because he's amiable.
He's amiable and he's not a Dragonrider. And it's at that point, just after that, that's when Otto, a Hightower, the sponsors, paymasters of the Citadel, he gets appointed Hand of the King as well. So it does feel like there's something going on. No complete evidence. There's nothing that you can say, here's a smoking gun, we know that this happened. But there's so much evidence there. So what do you, I mean, that's my democracy sort of takedown of them. But what's your kind of take on that, the Great Council?
Is Archmaester Vagon still alive in the TV show? I know you don't know that because we haven't seen it yet, but that's what I'm wondering. No. Right. So if he is, I think, just on the contrary, maybe that's why he took the Maester's idea, because his son Vagon technically could have taken the throne. He didn't ride dragons. He would have been, he's so smart, right? We can agree. He had like a gold link in like, which is economy and money and stuff, right? But he's a really smart dude, which is why he didn't want the throne. Honestly, he should have been forced to take it and all this stuff. And the Maester should have, he doesn't ride dragons, but they're like, oh, he could go claim a dragon, I guess. I don't know. It's too, I mean, when you realize, like you said, they had a hand in counting the votes, and then they literally controlled probably the way that people voted too. So, I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, it's about, so for those who don't know, Archmaester Vaemon is he is one of Jaehaerys's the old king's sons, who went off and became a maester because they thought, hey, he's got so many sons, we don't need him to be king. And then it turns out
he liked to read. He just he didn't like girls. He's like, dude, this is too much. Like, come on, guy. He was way ahead of his time. He's like, I mean, I don't know how to describe it because we don't have that much about him in Fire and Blood, but he's literally like, dude, I'm just chilling. Like, I want to read because I can learn as much stuff as possible. Characters like that in A Song of Ice and Fire, in my opinion, have the utmost respect because they're kind of they're like too good for it, kind of. You know what I mean? You have to, they just have this certain level of coolness where you're like, oh, I aspire to be like that. He's like, I don't even want the throne. I'm just going to chill here at the Citadel. I don't know.
Yeah, and he absolutely, and he goes there, but then it suddenly turns out all of Jaehaerys's other sons die, and so it's like Jaehaerys says,
"Did the Maester set that up?"
Yeah. Do you wanna be? Apparently, he wanted him to, but then he was the one. They had a private meeting, the two of them, and everyone assumed that Jaehaerys was trying to persuade him to do this. And then he came out from this meeting and said, okay, I've changed my mind. We're going to have a great council.
Yeah, it's like his son doesn't even probably realize he's been manipulated by the Maesters. You know what I mean? Like, while he's there around them in Citadel, like, they're like, hey, dragons. As you can tell, they probably have Valyrian text that survived the Freehold. We know that the Citadel has that. We just haven't heard it, or we haven't read it in the first person point of view, so we don't know exactly what it says, but I'm pretty sure he probably was privy to some stuff like, dude, dragons equal war. Even if you have them as a symbol of power to maintain a certain amount of civility, it's only a matter of time before a crazy person gets a dragon. So, you know what I mean? So I feel like he might have willingly been manipulated by the Maesters to be like, yeah, Dad, just let everybody, you're going to die soon. The people who are alive right now, let them pick who they want to be the next heir. And then obviously, like you said, they go with Viserys because not only is he amiable, he doesn't have a dragon, which is the most important thing. So it's kind of like, yeah, I don't know. Maester, I mean, you can't even get mad at the Maesters for that. I get mad at the Maesters because I'm a Targaryen fan, because, you know, but yeah.
Well, I mean, I think, I always think, if I were there, I would probably go off and be a maester. That's just it seems a better life than life than most of these other lords get. But anyway, let's go to a question. George R. Tolkien saying, salutations, Robert. Salutations to you. I wanted to ask if you think we'll be seeing some Damon and Rhaenyra love-giving lessons, possibly some ginormous mushroom member. Well, we've got these two up here. Just on the mushroom thing, almost certainly we're not going to see mushroom. We've had no casting news. There's been no. I don't think we're going to get him. But maybe. Oh, he's maybe somewhere in the background. He's not going to be a significant part. So Mark's now sort of like,
because this isn't a spoiler, right? So the Condal did an interview with Elio and Linda, right? Elio went to the premiere in somewhere in Europe, right? And he asked him, he said, are we going to get mushroom? And Condal, I got to figure out how to say his name. It's really bugging me. He literally goes, background character or maybe a named part, right? And then so he's got to be.
So he might be, but I think he's not. I mean, he's a character who's being used as a source in Fire and Blood rather than someone who realistically was center of the action in this story. So it's understandable. But let's talk about these two people, Rhaenyra and Damon. Now, what happens in the book is, so after we've got the War of the Stepstones, Damon gets a bit bored and he heads back. So we know we're in this part of the story, and some stuff happens there. We get various different accounts of what might have happened, but it does all seem to sort of revolve around Rhaenyra and Damon and Kristen Cole. And one of the things at the end of all of this, Damon gets banished again. So clearly he does something. Now, they have been shifting a few things around from the books to the adaptation on the show, so I don't think we should necessarily expect exactly what is there on one of the things in the book. But Mark, what's your best guess? Are we going to be seeing how should we put this delicately, some lessons in love going on?
Keeping it PG, yeah, probably, for sure. There's probably gonna be some nudity too, because there's someone who works on the set. You know what a merkin is, right?
I'm aware of the term. Yeah,
right. So there's supposedly a scene yes, for sure. There will be some X-rated stuff on this episode, and you can actually look at the like if you go to Warner Media Press Room, House of the Dragon on Google, and then click on images or maybe news. One of the first ones that pops up is the MSRP rating. I think that's what it's called. The rating for the show is like TVMA, and then it says nudity, adult content, violence. So it's definitely this episode for sure. It's going to happen. As far as, I mean, I don't really want to say like what happens in the books. Like, I mean, you don't, it doesn't matter. Like, basically, if you go by what Mushroom says that Damon tells Rhaenyra, hey, if you really want Kristen Cole to see you as a woman, you have to be a woman. How are you going to be a woman unless you learn? And then she goes to the Street of Silk. So that's what yeah.
So I think what we're looking at here is something not exactly that, but clearly if we're going to go down this route that Damon, and presumably they will, that Damon will get banished again, he has to do a thing that's bad. Now, the Damon here as a character, they've been making him more nuanced than in the books. Is that in the books you do actually, or I certainly go through and believe quite a lot of the things that are said about him. He doesn't come across as the most sympathetic character. But for example, we're not shown back in episode whatever it was, 1 or 2, whatever, must have been 1. We're not shown whether he did actually, or indeed how he did that toast to the heir for a day. Was it done sympathetically? Was it done mockingly? We're not, and it's left to us to decide. And then we see again and again how he is clearly attached to his family, to Viserys and Rhaenyra. There is clearly a care and a love there that doesn't really come across in the books. In the books, if you want to know what Damon's doing, you just have to go with the general rule. What is it do you think that would get Damon closest to power? He's going to do that thing. Here, it's not that simple, I think. Here, on the show, they seem to be trying to show that, yes, he does want power, but he cares about his family, and that is his that's his weak spot as much as anything else. I mean, how would you describe what they've done to his character on the show compared to in the book?
I think they're trying to make, because like we don't have any POV in Fire and Blood, right? So it's all like, this Maester said Damon did this, or Mushroom said Damon did this. So that's why, like you said, you got that vibe that he's just kind of like, what's going to give me the next thing to get some power? How close can I get to the Iron Throne without like usurping it and sitting on it myself, right? How close can? And then in the show, they're like, oh, that's his mentality. We're going to show everybody by putting him on the Iron Throne, right? And Rhaenyra's like, or I mean, I'm sorry, the Kingsguard that comes with her, he's like, what is this? Like he's about to go tell the king and pull the sword out, right? So that's the way that the show is trying to show you. I think they're I think they're just trying to make that version of Damon that you get from Fire and Blood, but you have to realize that like the story kind of contradicts itself, because it'll say Damon's trying to do whatever he can to get close to power, but then also he tries to save lives at the beginning of the war by taking Harrenhal and landing Caraxes right atop the spire and literally kills nobody. So it's like, if you want to be as close to power, why would you not do what I kept yelling at the screen in Game of Thrones for with Daenerys? Like, what? Fly to King's Landing. Just go straight to the Red Keep and kill Cersei, right? Why didn't Damon ever do, like he does, but it's after a very strategic moves. You know what I mean? He tries to keep Rhaenyra, his children alive, right? He waits until there's literally no one in King's Landing, you know what I mean, before they go, all right, we're going to go take it. So the show, the Fire and Blood is trying to say Damon is one way, but actually, no, he's not. You know what I mean? And you have to figure that out by thinking about it like this and talking about it out loud. Like, what are some actions he did? Like, okay, he married Rhaenyra against the king's will, right? But like, that should have happened anyway. Rhaenyra should have married Aegon. Like, they have to keep the dragons in their family. And like the show, Viserys is like, he's afraid of dragons, and maybe that's going to lead into him allowing some of the mistakes that happen to happen, right? Because he's kind of like has this fear of dragons. But for the most part, Damon is actually, he's arrogant, and that's what people don't like. But he's actually always in the right for the most part. Like the Stepstones, that's a massive problem, not just for House Velaryon. They're the richest house in the realm right now, right? Even richer than the Lannisters and the Hightowers right now, right? But like, that's going to eventually be a bigger problem. Like when who's it? Olenna's great grandmother or something. The Lady Red One is like, yep, uncle's dragging us into this war. I mean, you would have had to, like, this was going to happen anyway. Like something similar to the dance would have happened anyway, because it was bound to happen. I don't know. I get really sidetracked. Like,
and I think that's fine, but I think the way that Fire and Blood is written allows different interpretations of characters. So I agree with you completely. He comes across as a lot more intelligent and cunning, I think, when you're reading the books. I see his delay in attacking King's Landing. That's more strategic than anything else, as far as I'm concerned, in that he just thinks that they wouldn't capture it beforehand, and he just thinks that, because there's a whole issue, at the risk of jumping ahead too far, when we do get to a civil war, there's this whole issue of the balance of who's got the best dragons, and it's not just a matter of who's got the most. It's also, some dragons are far more powerful and a battle sort of hardened than others, and they've got experienced riders. So it's a matter of just trying to figure out, if we did put all of these dragons together, which side would come out on top. And Damon seems to make a strategic decision. I don't know. It might be a draw. We definitely don't have a strategic advantage yet. So he does seem to think through these kinds of things, and is not as rash as perhaps on a first reading he comes across. He calculates stuff before making decisions.
Yeah, he's like, in my opinion, he's one of the smartest people to ride a dragon. To be fair, we don't really know that much about, the mentality of people who rode the dragons. But as far as every decision he makes, all the way up until the end, totally. But it all, like, he kind of had a master plan. So everybody's like, Larys, the Clubfoot, is this manipulating guy, master of whispers eventually, but Damon is kind of like, he's I don't know. I respect him a lot. I like Damon as much as I like Daenerys. When I'm watching Game of Thrones, I immediately was like, okay, Daenerys is my favorite character. Damon, in my opinion, Fire and Blood, for sure, favorite by far. But also, I'm on the greens for like a good chunk of the story too. So,
well, I mean, I think we will be a lot more and I wonder, just throwing this out there, I wonder whether there's going to be a twist somewhere in the next 4 or 5 episodes or whatever that makes us go, you know what, the Greens might have a point here. More than anything else that's going on. I wonder whether there's, because everything, when you read the book, everything that's said, and the section where we get the most actual verbatim people saying things and justifying stuff is in the Green Council, where they're deciding, shall we go for this or not? All of that seems like trying to find a justification. What are the reasons can we give for this? But I wonder whether there's going to be another twist that makes it feel more like they think actually that's what Viserys wanted. Already they're teeing up this idea that he's a bit on the fence. Yes, he's telling Rhaenyra things, but yes, he's also saying, he clearly loves his son and things like that. And maybe they're gonna go down that route. I don't know. I think we'll have to wait and see on that. But I just got a sneaky feeling that they will make it less clear cut than most people's reading of the book was.
Yeah, you gotta I've noticed people comment on my videos sometimes. They'll be like, "Hey, what do I need to read all of the Song of Ice and Fire books for House of Dragon, or should I just read Fire and Blood?" And I always say, well, yeah, you could just read Fire and Blood, but really to get a picture of the world and how it works, and if you want to be like, I'm amoral, I'm Captain Moral, right? If you want to be like that kind of moral superiority thing, you have to read the POV of people who live in Westeros. So that's the main series. So if you want to get why I think certain people are right and why I'm like, yo, Damon is he's like one of the best characters. Like, the reason being is because you see how other people interact and the choices they make, in like, you know, like you see John's mentality change from like, oh, it's poor me, I'm a bastard, you know what I mean, to like to like I'm a man now. They chose me, right? He immediately falls into the role of Lord Commander. You know what I mean? It takes him a little bit, but ultimately he's like, yeah, I earn this. You know what I mean? And some of the decisions he makes, you don't agree with, but for the most part, like I said, I don't know. I don't even know how I got to talking about Jon Snow, but just I think you should eventually try to read the Song of Ice and Fire books to get a better understanding of why Damon, or why Rhaenyra, or why Aegon II, or why Alicent was right. Like, the only reason why I think Alicent is kind of did the right thing is because I read the other Song of Ice and Fire books. It gave me a different perspective. I was like, oh yeah, no, actually, technically, like, yes, Sir Otto on the show is being more manipulative right now, but there's going to be a time jump. We saw that in the trailer, so we don't know if he's always going to be like that. He is now. She's younger. It's easier to manipulate her, right? But when she gets older, is she still going to be that way, right? So maybe, we can kind of see, like you were saying, even more, like there's going to be some kind of a twist that makes the Greens seem more like, and the reason why I have that perspective is from reading, the Song of Ice and Fire books, and realizing like, oh, no. Yeah, there's no written laws in Westeros per se, but there are established traditions, and technically Alicent is following established traditions. So she's following law. She's following precedent that was set before, you know what I mean? So it kind of gives you more insight and sympathy into the Greens wanting to name Aegon as king. Really, they should have gotten married, and that's already been suggested. That got suggested, right? But Viserys goes, "Oh no, he's 2, right?" But it like, you can wait, just like they just wait. But that's what they should have did. So,
well, yeah. I mean, I think that's an entirely different. I mean, baby's 2. She's I don't know what age she is here at this point in, because they've aged her up a little bit, but
she's
by
like
the time
17 or something.
he's 18 or something. I don't know how old she would, but let's not go down that route. That's quite a slippery path to probably quite a dark place. But one thing I would just say before we move off of Damon, one thing I've noticed here with Damon is that they are using him as very Valyrian, in a way that is opposite to Viserys. So he's with his dragon and riding his dragon more than almost anyone else. He speaks in old Valyrian to Rhaenyra just like all the time. He gives her the Valyrian steel necklace. He's there. He's on the side of like, we're the Targaryens, we can do what we want. which is kind of in contrast to Viserys, who's like always like maybe we'll do that. I'm not going to confront these people. Yeah, go on.
I actually wanted to message you this in the DMs and ask you that necklace that he gives her. You just reminded me if I mentioned that in the books, it's an Empress of Ling, the necklace. Is that the case for the TV show? Is that going like he just says it's a Valyrian steel necklace? You have a piece of our ancestry, just like I do with Dark Sister. But is that, if that is, that could be a perfect segue because they're going to be doing the ET show. And Ling is like supposed to be, it's like ancient China and then Japan. I don't know. When I saw that and I forgot about it literally until you remember when we were, I don't know. Yeah.
I mean, that would be good. And I do have a feeling they are, as a complete aside, they are trying to tee up a few of these other potential spin-offs. They've got the Nymeria story. We've had a couple of references to that already, so people just have this in their mind. We've obviously got the Sea Snake himself, Corlys Velaryon, is in there, so that's in people's minds. If they go ahead with one or both of them, then already people will be thinking they've not just plucked a random story out from nowhere. But yeah, I don't about that necklace. I don't know. They were trying to show it as a Valyrian thing, about him saying, "You're on Team Valyria, you're on Team Targaryen here." That's how I interpreted it, and it's like showing this against the High Towers. With their different religion, they've already got, we've got Alicent trying to teach Rhaenyra how to pray to her gods and things like that. They're trying to set up two different sides here: the Valyrian side and the kind of the Andal side, the natural Westerosi side. Say natural Westerosi, but the sort of the more established Westerosi culture. So it's two different cultures, and that will be even more the case when they break down into the Greens and the Blacks, because we will have all of the sort of the more Targaryen-y people on one side, and the other side will be a lot more Hightowery. That's my take anyway.
I think they're trying to, we're going to eventually find this out. And I've said this before. You know how John calls it, so Leathers speaks the old tongue to one Wegdar 1-1, right? He's like, he says something. The old tongue in Valyrian is the same thing, man. And you know how he just said the Andals is the more established Westerosi? The old gods, the Weirwood tree right behind you. And the necklace, speaking of which, the necklace, he's holding the necklace. I can't believe it took me that long to bring up my question about the necklace. But yeah, so I think we're going to eventually find out. Like, okay, so the Targaryens and the Valyrians, keeping it short, blood magic runs in with fire magic, sacrifice, you have to get something. It's the same thing with the old gods. You know that they used to put pieces of bodies and human hearts inside the mouths of the Weirwood tree, and they still do. Some of them still do. So I think we're going to realize that the Targaryens, the Valyrians rather, and the old gods, the forgotten, many named god, they're all more linked. So the Targaryens doing this stuff, like talking in front of the Weirwood tree, Bran being linked with Bloodraven being literally, well, okay, so he's half Blackwood, right? But he's still Targaryen. He's got the Targaryen dominant features, right? Jon, right? That's why they're doing this new Jon Snow show. It's all coming. Can't wait.
Well, I'm going to spoil a video I'm going to do at some point. I don't know when. It might be in season, or it might take me a little bit more thinking to do. But spoilers for later in the show. So Damon will die, and when he dies,
what? Dude,
sorry,
really?
When he dies in the God's Eye Lake. Now, this, I think, I have to do my research on this, but I think, and it's not just him, it's also Aemond as well. I think this is the first time that the Weirwoods will get a taste of Targaryen blood, which is what they drink up, because that's the God's Eye Lake, and we've got the Isle of Faces in the middle. And so the hub of the Weirwood network, as we understand it, will suddenly get to kind of drink up and get, somehow they sort of upload information from this, memories, understandings. And if Damon knows, we haven't had confirmation of this, but he was heir for a while. If he knows about that prophecy that came from Aegon, suddenly the Weirwood network would as well. So I think that you then have to see, okay, so maybe is this the moment? Is this the moment that suddenly the Weirwood network starts going, okay, well, what are we going to do about this? Why don't we try and get some old sort of First Men blood into this Targaryen stream? Let's marry in a Blackwood. Then we can try and maybe we can get. This is where Bloodraven comes in, of course. His mother was a Blackwood. So that's I've got my if in doubt blame Bloodraven has got a new link, a new angle for me to come at. Is that I think that this is where the old gods start to understand what's going on with the Targaryens, with the prince that was promised and stuff like that.
Yeah, he's so much more special. Like, I hate to sound like cynical, or not even cynical, but like a book purist or whatever. But Bloodraven is so much more special in the books. A Thousand Eyes in One. He's literally It's so crazy. Like, read Dunk and Egg, read like all three of those books, and you'll be like, oh, this Bloodraven dude, man, he's really special. He's one of my favorite characters. But like you're saying, yes, and also remember how I told you that one time you remind me of Giles from Buffy a little bit. I think it's the accent, right? So when you're saying that, the vampires in Buffy get a taste for Slayer blood, and they love it. There's like a few different episodes where that's a thing. So that's kind of like the Weirwood net gets a taste of Targaryen blood, and they're like, oh, yeah, we gotta get some First Men action up in there, like the old original line. And maybe they'll be like, oh, that's a different version of what we already are, which is what I was saying. Like, it just makes sense that dragons were in Westeros before the Targaryens and the Valyrians came up. Well, the Valyrian outpost Dragonstone was built before the Doom of Valyria. So obviously they've been over there. And then also you hear about them down in Old Town trying to enslave the elder races. Well, at least I think that's what they were doing. I think that's why Old Town originally was called Battle Isle, was because the Valyrians battled with the ancient races. So you had the Children of the Forest, the giants, they teamed up, and the Valyrians came over on the dragons to try to enslave them. And maybe the Valyrians found out about it because the Children of the Forest and the Giants came from a subsect of where they initially came from, out of a Shy or something. And you know how we hear about these migrations like Nymeria and all this stuff, and like how people don't go certain places anymore. Maybe that's kind of related. And we find out it's all one bloodline that makes these different, you know what I mean? So like, because it just, I don't know, why is it called the Old Tongue, right? We have the Old Tongue, the Common Tongue, and then like you have High Valyrian, which is like the it's hard to explain without completely changing the subject.
No. And maybe I'll have you on another time, and we'll go down, because I think this is a fascinating area for discussion. As I say, one of the things I want to start digging into. Just as we're sort of an hour into the stream, moderators, thank you. You do an amazing job. So if you are there in the chat, please do show the moderators a little bit of love. And also patrons, thank you. I thank you every time, because I cannot do what I do without your support. If you do want to support this channel, the best way to do it is through Patreon. There's a link down in the description. But let's go to some more questions from my patrons. And let's talk about the White Hart. This is Mara Lee. Hi there, Mara. Mara Lee question saying the White Hart appeared before Rhaenyra and Christian Cole. I thought for a moment that she would have him kill it. In order to help her prove her claim to the Iron Throne as heir. She did not, and I was impressed by her maturity. Would it have changed anything, knowing what we know about what happens to her at the end of the show? How will the symbol of seeing the White Hart play out moving forwards, do you think? So this is the hunt that we had, and you are Sir Hunts, and we've got.
I used to have a bow behind me when I first started YouTube. Yeah. All along, and then I just was like, I'm not really that into archery. Like, I like archery, but I'm not that into it. And I was like, no, I have to have this behind me because I'm Sir. Yeah, but yeah.
But we have the High Towers who are desperately trying to sort of crowbar in. Here's an omen for you. That's obviously that baby Aegon should be king. That this, in the old days, this was a symbol of kingship. What do you think? Do you think we're going to see anything else of this? Was this a one episode thing, this White Hart? Do you think it means anything that she let it go?
So Sapochnik and Condal said in the behind the episode thing, they're like, we kind of stole something from Arthurian legend. This White Hart isn't in the books, but we wanted to take that. It's like this majestic hunt type of thing. And if you see it, it's good luck kind of thing, right? So I think it's probably just a season 1 kind of thing. Like, we'll have Rhaenyra think back about it, but ultimately what it means, in my opinion, is that like she admired the throne, but she didn't have what it takes to take it. And that would have been having Kristen Cole kill the white stag and dragging it back to camp and being like, no, look, I'm the heir, right? So she took the boar instead, which is symbolic because, you know, Robert was killed by, that's a time traveling boar. That's so crazy. I was like, oh, what? I thought that she was going to, I don't know. But yeah, so I think that's what that was. It's ultimately, it's like the white stag, she admired it. That's kind of the really honorable thing to do, right? That's honestly the right thing to do. You probably shouldn't kill something that looks that pretty, right? Kill a regular deer, but not something that looks like that because it's rare. It's like, you know, it's majestic. But because she didn't do that, it's symbolic for what happens in the end with her sitting on the Iron Throne and stuff. And like, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are a lot of things going on in that. I thought it was a really good episode, a really strong episode. So you get the contrast between when the boar attacks and they're there and they do make the kill. They're on the hunt and they kill an animal in an actual fight, and the contrast with that with King Viserys, and he's there and they've got that stag and it was holding it in position and he was given the thing, and it took a couple of goes and he was shutting his eyes. You could tell he didn't really want to do it, but he had to do it. And then everyone's giving him this like sarcastic round of applause. I mean,
good job, man. You're doing
exactly.
great.
Yeah, well done, King. Well done. You got it nearly on the first go, and it was just like the contrast there was very clear. But it's with the white stag, it was. I think it was left deliberately a little bit vague as to what the meaning is. The fact that they let it go meant that the others didn't get a chance for it to be killed, and so that their omen wasn't proven true. But I think it does show a little bit about character. As you say, this was Kristen Cole was going to kill it or he was going to try, but she's there going, no, we don't have to prove anything. We don't have to do it. We've got a kill already. We can just let it go. And I think they are trying to show. I do wonder whether there was a hint there of the fact that she is lonely, and we see that in that episode. And she's sort of sitting there, and she's on her own. She was best friends with Alicent, and now suddenly she thinks it's just her. There's no one else around her anymore. And I do wonder whether she felt some kind of empathy with that, because it was on its own and everyone was trying to get it, and she would just say no, let it run free.
Yeah,
so I think
something like that doesn't deserve to be killed, you know, like you shouldn't corrupt basically how she feels about herself. Like, let her do her own thing, like let it go, you know what I mean? Like, let her do what she wants, because like, why not? You know what I mean? And I think the fact that it's a white stag is more symbolic of like Targaryens in their likeness. I know that's a little bit of a silly connection, but also you could say that it, just like this story, everything's cyclical. The stag could represent the Baratheons ultimately taking the Targaryen dynasty being wiped out. You know what I mean? So with Robert. So I think with her letting that escape, she's doing a similar thing with her father when Viserys decides not to marry her to Aegon. It's like, no, that's the wrong thing to do. Like, no, it's the wrong thing to kill the stag. But ultimately, it's going to come back and bite you in the butt, just like it will with her for not consolidating with her brother and making some sort of, you know, obviously it already went too far and it was out of their hands, but you know, it's everything comes back. And I think the stag has several different meanings. One of them could be like you said, she's lonely. She like, you know, connects with the deer in the way that like everybody wants the deer. Everybody wants her to do something, but like ultimately she kind of just wants to do her own thing, which is what she let the deer do because she can't do that, you know? And that's what the whole episode they're arguing about. She's like, the king's like, I'm not even above tradition, you know?
Yeah. And I think there was a couple of people in the chat I noticed who were pointing out, yes, she said, let it go. But at the same time, what was Kristen Cole going to do? He's just there, got his sword. He didn't have a bow as far as we could tell. Was he going to like run at it in full armor and then try and stab it?
I don't know if you played a little game called Elder Scrolls, but I've killed plenty of deer and boars with my sword, just because I would be like a berserk type character, so I wouldn't have my bow on hand, so I would just run up at it and just start hacking at it. It's possible if you can do it in video game.
I do believe I do, and yeah, I'm a big fan of Skyrim, and I can assure you, I was more the let's get out my bow and from a safe distance shooter. It was.
So you use a magic staff? Are you a mana user then? Is that what you're saying?
I was more. You could get pretty good with
a
you
rogue.
Get the bow, and then you can get arrows, and you can make them magical, and so you can do like electricity attacks and all the rest of it. So you could make it pretty impressive. And if you're sneaking around, they never even see you come. So it's just like. I don't know. Anyway, I could
it's a
get
more
distracted
fun way
with
to
the
play.
Scrolls.
Yeah, it's a more fun way to play for sure.
And just for Ed, if there are any complete aside, if there are any other Elder Scrolls fans, it's still not here. The next one after Skyrim, we still haven't got an announcement, and it's probably still going to be another 2 or 3 years. They have nearly finished the game that they're saying, well, we've got to finish this one before we go on to try and start writing that one. They've now pretty much finished that. So at some point, they're going to actually start working on the next one. So there is some hope, but it's still going to be a few years away.
You never played Elder Scrolls Online?
No, I've never quite got into that, but it's
that game is awesome.
The problem I have is that I get quite addicted to these things, and it just will completely take over my life. And if it's something like Elder Scrolls Online, I imagine that there's no end to it, and I would just be stuck there forever in Skyrim, just like wandering around, killing, heading down into ancient elven Dwemer strongholds, and I'd just never return. So
naming all your characters after Aegon.
It's probably
Jerry's
for the channel that I don't do that. Yeah, or maybe Terra Incognita saying, "Where's Robert's gaming channel?" Yeah, it's if I started that, there would be no more of this channel. I can assure you. So it's better for everyone, I think. But let's go into a question about the Iron Throne. 444 saying, do we know Targaryen who was cut by the Iron Throne other than Joffrey Baratheon? As there are some clues that Cersei could be Aerys II's daughter. It could be the Iron Throne, in fact, cut only Targaryen descendants. So we'll get onto the specifics of that for a moment. But the bigger question here, I did a video a little while ago about the Iron Throne. As you all know, there are rumors, thoughts, the Iron Throne cuts unworthy kings, and there are various bits of evidence that people come up with this, and clearly we're seeing in this show, Viserys is getting scratched by it, and he's getting infected wounds, and it's not good. And that pattern is repeated all the way through. Maegor got impaled on it. You go all the way through to the Mad King. He got called King Scab because he got cut so many times by it. So I think the first question, before we get onto the specifics of what 444 was saying, first question is, do you think there's any truth to this? Does the Iron Throne judge the people who are sitting on
it? Yeah. Like, okay, so the question was anybody else ever cut by it other than a Targaryen? And then you say Cersei being cut by it, she could be the Mad King's daughter. Right. The main reason why that could be is because Aegon, the dude who forged it, Aegon the Conqueror, it was his enemy's blades. So anybody who descends and has the same blood of him, which would, if you believe that the Mad King took Joanna and had Cersei and Jaime, right? If you believe that, then obviously, yeah, that could be why it's cutting only the Targaryens, because it's the enemies of Aegon getting back at his descendants in a way, because there's some pretty famous deaths on the Iron Throne, you know what I mean, or related to it, right? So there's actually people who I think Baelor the Blessed might have been driven insane by something that might have been left residually on the I don't know. I think, to answer your question, yes, it's totally possible that mostly only Targaryens get cut on it, because we don't hear about Robert. And okay, he's descended from Targaryens, so maybe that proves that it's not. It just has to be an unworthy Targaryen ruler. I think it's possible, because those are literally Aegon's enemies' blades that they didn't want to bend the knee; they had to. You know what I mean? There was a few houses that were like, okay, yeah, let's join the Targaryens, not because of their dragons, it's because we respect them, but very few. And those ones that did it, House Velaryon, are literally descended from Valyria. And in the books, it's believed that Aegon's half-brother, Damon Velaryon, is Aegon's father's bastard, right? So that, if I'm not mistaken, and then also so was the first Baratheon that Aegon installed at Storm's End. Was supposed to Orys or whatever. It's supposed to be his half brother. So I for sure the people he's sitting on these people's blades, and if there's any kind of magic, this is a fantasy story. Of course, they would want to like draw that blood out and sort of to get back at Aegon. So
I like that. I've not really thought about it from that perspective. This is that the magic is the blades trying to get revenge on Targaryens. I mean, I came out with a slightly tinfoily theory that perhaps this wasn't judging Targaryen worthiness, whether they were good kings in the way that we might think about, did they rule wisely or anything like that. But it actually was judging whether they were doing what Aegon, this was Aegon's chair, what Aegon was wanting, which was, if he was this believer in this prophecy, keep the Seven Kingdoms united and whole and keep the Targaryens on the throne. And when you look at it through that lens, you go, okay, so actually Maegor the Cruel, yes, he got killed by it, but that was not when he murdered a whole load of thousands of builders just because he wanted to, which was a pretty evil act. That didn't get him. But it was like when he declared war on his family. That was when he died. When you look at Aegon the Conqueror himself, one time he got scratched. And when was that? It was the moment that he decided to end the war with Dawn, admitting basically he's never going to unite the Seven Kingdoms under his rule. So it's that when you start looking at it like that, you go, okay, so maybe this is when Rhaenyra got scratched by it. It was immediately after she had rejected a peace treaty. Effectively from Alicent. Alicent said, hey, should we have peace? And she said, no, I'm going to sit on the Iron Throne and hunt down your side. So it was like, and immediately she got cut. So there is a link between whether or not a Targaryen is doing those things that Aegon wanted them to do and whether they get scratched.
What about Viserys, though, in the show? He's following the prophecy and he's getting mutilated. I don't like how you keep saying scratched. It's not a scratch. These are like vicious cuts.
Yeah. Okay, so scratched is probably the wrong
Maegor got a knife. Maegor got cut through the throat.
Yeah. Okay, so my take on Viserys is that it's he never does one thing that's terrible that like is going to impale him, but he does lots of weak decisions, one after another. And I think in any reasonable reading of Fire and Blood, and I think it's coming through in House of the Dragon as well, he is his lack of ability to take strong leadership of this issue, who is his successor, is what causes the Dance of the Dragons. He could have come out at any stage and just shut down the debate completely 100%, and he never did. And this series of weak decisions. So when we saw him getting, and it was a scratch, when he was there, he banished Damon. So it was like he scratched, and we saw it. He scratched his hand just after he banished Damon. It's like,
or the knife cut it to the bone because he lost 2 fingers after that. Remember? I think it was a little bit more than a because he has his hand like this over the armrest, and then he kind of stands up a little bit. But what you're saying makes sense because he's doing Damon, in my opinion, is the best person. So he's sending him away when no, you need Damon near you if you want to continue.
So that's the theory. As I say, it's slightly tinfoily, but I think it does work. Every time people seem to get cut / impaled, whatever word you wish to use, then it does seem to be after they've done something to dilute Targaryen power in some way. I've just got to go back and check. We did answer I think we did answer about Cersei as well. But let's talk about Valyrian steel. Lady Pushkin says, do you think we will see Valyrian steel being made with all these dragons about? Or do you think George R. R. Martin wants to keep that mystery, the mystery behind that? And also, what on earth is that carriage made of? I do not know. We're doing the carriage first, unless you've got any brainwaves. Chat, this is the kind of thing I will throw to you. The carriage looks amazing. You know the one I'm talking about. It's been there a couple of times. It does look amazing. What do you think what is it metal? Is it like carved wood in some way? I'd love to know what you think. But Mark, you start us off. What's your take on it?
It looks like it's so Hightower. The first time we saw it was when Alicent is riding in it in Rhaenyra's flying through the city, right? And then Rhaenyra lands and gets in it with her or something like that. Or Alicent rides it up to her at the dragon pit, and then Rhaenyra goes, "Would you like to go flying?" She's like, "Haha, no thanks." You know what I mean? That scene, it looks like it could be. It actually looks very similar to the Kingsguard armor, because you know how it has those stripes of leather in it and then metal, right? So that's probably some sort of tanned hide that they brightly painted and stretched it over wood, and then giving it like this polished, burnished metal look. It's just something to distinguish the Hightowers. Like, yo, these people have a lot of money, and also they have to stick out, because there's no Hightowers in the TV show and in Game of Thrones. So they had to say like, oh no, the Hightowers are like this pretty prominent. They're the most important players in the game next to the Targaryens for this show. So I feel like that was literally what that was. It was something the design team was like, let's make House Hightower stand out, and let's make it look like this.
Yeah, so I'm just quickly going through the chat to see if anyone's got any good ideas. That Trent J saying Valyrian steel. I think that's too much Valyrian steel. That would be hugely expensive. Nice idea. Dan thinks that the carriage looks terrible. Genlob says lunar module. Yeah, there was. I can see how you might get there. A carbon fiber carriage, Trent J. Yeah, again, painted weirwood, asks Connie Ive. I was wondering about ironwood. Maybe that might work. Levac, wood banded with metal, constructed like a gate, like it's an armored car. Looks like it's made from pumpkins, says Sword of the Morning. So I think nobody's got an idea. Dragonbone, Naruto Dragonbone's an interesting idea. I think it would look more dragony if it was a dragonbone. I don't know quite what that means, but I don't think anyone's got a clear idea on what this is made of. But if you're watching this back later and you do know, or you've got a very good guess, do just pop it down in the comments, because I genuinely don't have an idea of what that is. But the other half of the question is about Valyrian steel. Now, I think that the short answer to are we going to see it being made, I think the answer to that is no, because the knowledge of how Valyrian steel was made was lost with the Doom of Valyria. But Mark, are you expecting any lore drops here? I mean, George R. R. Martin has given us lots of random extra things about Valyria. Do you think we're going to get any extra information about Valyrian steel?
So Tobo Mott, is that the name of the blacksmith who can rework it? It's like George will say something, and then later on you'll be like, oh, well, this kind of contradicts that. And he does it on purpose. So he says that the Valyrian steel recipe is lost, but really he tells us what it is. He says in Tyrion's second or third POV in a Game of Thrones, he's literally like, Dragonbone, lighter than steel, stronger too, more flexible. That's what Valyrian steel is. So Dragonbone with regular steel, with not spells like Tobo Mott says, right? Blood magic. You got to kill somebody, probably someone close to you, right? And that blood has to be worked in to make like more Valyrian steel. To rework it, probably something different. But that's what Valyrian steel is, literally just dragon bone in steel. Like dragon bone is the carbon material that you need to make iron to steel or whatever. I don't know how to do metal stuff, but I'm pretty sure the way to turn iron into steel is you add carbon and then fold it or something. I don't know.
I mean, do you sort of subscribe then? Because a lot of people do think a lot about this. Do you subscribe to the idea that the legend of Azor Ahai and Nisa, where you get basically the end of the story is that
he just
forge his sword, he has to kill his lover. That you could say is blood magic. So you saying that this is actually a legend that is sort of like giving us hints about how to create Valyrian steel.
It's a recipe. So basically, he's saying, okay, I made the first Valyrian steel sword. This is how I did it. I tried to temper it in water, didn't work.
Mm-hmm.
Try to temper it in a line, didn't work. Maybe that's hinting at using something for somebody who was originally at Casterly Rock, because I couldn't get over that. Lion's Heart couldn't do it, but someone you love does. I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's literally all. It's just the first Valyrian steel recipe. George is a really smart guy, but when you just when this is your TV, like when the books are your TV, it's like, yo, come on. You said it right there. He said, this is how you make Valyrian steel. And then he has the audacity to say it was lost in the doom of it. Was it? No, it wasn't. You just told us. I don't know. He's awesome.
Well, I've this theory that perhaps the Maesters know, because we know that the Maesters, they went over to Valyria beforehand. They would like learn stuff, and then they would come back. And we know that at the very least, they've got the ability to reforge it and mold it, because the Valyrian steel link in your chain is made there at Old Town. So they've got somebody who knows how to do this. So there is some knowledge there at least. Whether they have the full knowledge of how to make it to start with and just decide they do not wish to do that, because they're not big fans of magic, and hey, maybe you do need some dragon fire there or something. I'm not sure, but it's like maybe they decided not to. But it wouldn't surprise me if they knew how to do it. They're just not telling, or there's so much stuff they're just not telling anyone.
Yeah, because like Euron, do you really think Euron has a full suit of Valyrian steel? If he does, someone knows how to make it, because there's no way that's just sitting around. Like there's 200 Valyrian steel swords in all the houses of Westeros. They're so sought after that the Lannisters, the richest house, cannot even buy one. They have to send who is it? Tyrion, right? They have to send. I can't remember which one of Tywin's brothers goes, right? But we don't know. He goes to go get Brightworld. We never hear about him. There's some people, some crazy people. I'm just kidding. Tinfoil theory that people think that he's still alive, and like there could be who's the guy who's in charge of the money in the Golden Company? He could be one of Tyrion's sons or whatever. But anyway, so the Valyrian steel is so sought after that they go after like crazy missions to go do it. But Euron just has a Valyrian steel suit. I'm passing it to you because I feel like I'm talking too much.
No. I mean, I think so. This is just a passing reference, really, in one of the pre-release chapters from The Winds of Winter. Now, we see him in a Valyrian steel suit. Exactly, the Forsaken. It's a fantastic chapter. So the first thing we have to say is that George R. Martin has said that at least one of these chapters he has rewritten. So we shouldn't necessarily. It's not there yet. So a little asterisk next to it. But with Euron, could he have? Well, he's definitely got some pretty impressive items. So he's got Dragonbinder, that magical horn. I think the hints are reasonably strong that he managed to find a dragon egg. So is it beyond the realms of possibility that wherever he got these things from, he also got a suit of Valyrian steel armor? He will want us to believe that the only place he could possibly get these things from is old Valyria itself. He's crazy enough. Yes, he's crazy enough to go there, but could he possibly survive? I suspect not. But maybe somewhere, I don't know, a shy he could have gone, and maybe there's stuff there. Nobody knows what's hidden away there. So it's possible there's somewhere else that there was this cache of ancient stuff from Valyria that he's got hold of. So it's not beyond the realms of possibility. It's definitely not from Westeros. It will be somewhere over in Essos or beyond, because Valyria, we get told that the 200 Valyrian steel blades in Westeros, yes, but how many in Essos? Because this was where they were being made. There must be a lot more things there.
And we know that it's actually fairly common, because there's a couple of Dothraki dudes, and Dario has a Valyrian steel Arak, right?
Yeah.
And then also Sanduk the Shadow, who I hope he's a protector of the king at the end of this story. And I saw someone said, Sir Hunt, stop spoiling the book. So I'll just try to only respond to the questions we're answering at this point forward. But I really do hope we get to see Sanduk the Shadow. And guess what? He's got, if I'm not mistaken, 2 Valyrian steel. Well, a Valyrian steel Arak, and then maybe like a short sword or a dagger or something, or a dirk or something that's also Valyrian steel. So, like you said, there could be more over there. So I don't know.
Yeah, they could be. And just so people are aware of the spoilers policy on this channel, and I say it to my guests who come on, and Mark is doing absolutely fine. The policy here is In terms of show spoilers, I don't do them. If it's out in the public domain, if it's in a trailer, if it's something that George R. R. Martin showrunners have said, whatever, happy to discuss all of that. In terms of the books, if it's there, then we will happily talk about. The books have been out for years, so I think we're past the spoilers period there. If you want to go into the show completely fresh, then these live streams may not be the best place for you. But it will only be book spoilers. Can I just give another plug to the fact that this is a charity live stream? All of these during the show are going to be charity live streams. We've got $3,000 already over the course of this the series. It is a fantastic cause for Alzheimer's care and research. If you've ever had anyone in your life who's had Alzheimer's, then you'll know quite what a horrible disease it is. So if you can help someone else who's there, this is the kind of thing that hurts the people around that person as much as it hurts them. So if you are enjoying the stream, then and you can afford it, please do make a donation. There'll be a little button somewhere on your screen. Let's go to question from Sydney Rose, and this is about how the show and the books are sort of written as much as anything else. Saying, I know some book readers have complained that the characters are not authentic to the source material, but as a young historian, I appreciate that the histories of these noble houses don't always match up to what actually happened. Similar to our real world, historians of old had their personal prejudices and political agendas that often shape perceptions. I know that I despised Alicent after reading The Princess and the Queen, which is that comes back to what we were talking about a bit ago, but in the show you see the precarious political positions she and many of the women are forced to occupy. A lot of people are rolling their eyes that patriarchy is a central theme of the story and they want more nuance or subtlety, but I think that's the point. If history has taught us anything, it's that patriarchy and misogyny are not subtle. Do you think it's kind of intentional on the showrunners or George R. R. Martin's part to reframe and reimagine how we tell fantasy stories? So, what do you? I mean, I'll start actually on this one in terms of Fire and Blood. One of the things I think George R. R. Martin very clearly was doing was to whether it's, I mean, some people call it sort of subverting those kind of fantasy tropes or just trying to show a different light on it. It was very clear when you read Fire and Blood that whereas previously we've had this long list of kings and rulers, that's missing a whole swathe of actually what was really going on. Yes, Aegon was king, but he was away from King's Landing most of the time, and most of the time his sisters were actually sitting in the Iron Throne, one or other of them. So that was more of a kind of a joint rulership. Then we get this whole situation where we get Princess Aeria, who was twice the heir and twice snubbed for it. We get Alicent, who was there, who was clearly, this is Jaehaerys's wife, who was clearly, even if it wasn't quite a co-rule, she was, there were laws which were her laws, so she was hugely engaged in this. We have the queen who never was, Rhaenys. We get Rhaenyra, who's literally written out of history. She sat on the Iron Throne for 6 months, but that's not recorded. She was just literally, it was expunged from history. And it's as if George R. R. Martin's just hammering home again and again and again. You might just see a list of male names there as the rulers of Westeros, but that's not the whole story. So, I mean, what's your take on that, Mark?
Yeah, that's like George turned me, like, remember at the beginning they were saying like historians, Sydney Rose. I think I've actually, that username sounds familiar. I think she's commented on my videos before, or they or whoever. I'm sorry. George mentioned one time in this interview, like specifically in relation to Fire and Blood, that his take on having multiple different people's perspectives is like there's this one guy in Roman history who's known as Suetonius, and his version of stuff is kind of like what inspired Mushroom's version. So I feel like that is another way that he's hammering home history is not always what you think it is. You know what I mean? Like, for instance, Alexander the Great's mom had a really big influence over his life in general. So if I'm not mistaken, might actually be, Alexander the Great. Yeah, I learned that from Mike Tyson. Mike Tyson told me that. He didn't tell me that, but I'm saying I heard it in a podcast with Mike Tyson, and then I looked it up, and I was like, "Holy crap, that's crazy!" Because I had no idea. Like, that's not something you just hear. Like, "Oh, Alexander the Great is this guy. He conquered a large chunk of the world, the most of the world at one point, right?" And then you don't realize that, oh yeah, that was solely responsible for what his mom was like his campaign manager, basically. So I don't know. I agree.
So the way I say it, you're absolutely right in terms of like the way that Fire and Blood is written is as an in-world history book. It's deliberately there, and George R. R. Martin is deliberately at a kind of a meta level saying this may not be what actually happened. I'm going to give you lots of different accounts of what happened, and it's up to you to decide what actually happened. And so it's always prompting us to ask, who is it who's recording this history? And what is their agenda? This is where all the Maester conspiracies get into really hard territory, because the Maesters are never going to admit or give any evidence that there was a Maester conspiracy, are they? But how can we prove that they are if the only people telling us about what happened are the people who we're accusing of it?
So when they have Marwyn, people like Marwyn, he's like an inside man. He's going to tell all their dirty secrets to Daenerys, unless he's secretly someone else that's already encountered her, and he's like working with the Maesters, and he just told Sam that to throw him off of his trail, and he's like already been one of the people like the perfume Sinistol. We don't know how long it took him to get to Daenerys. He could already be over there. So really, the Maesters could be playing the long game. But yeah, like you said, they're never going to come out and be like, yeah, we had a hand in the tragedy of Summerhall. We had a hand in King Viserys for the TV show getting poisoned or something,
Yeah, absolutely. So it's and so this is an invite to us to look at. And George R. R. Martin is like Tolkien. He doesn't like analogy. He doesn't want to hit us over the head with a point to say this is the thing here. But applicability is huge, and so we are almost being invited to take a look at our own history and our own world and say, well, who's written this? Is this necessarily the truth? Is this what we've always thought is the case? Is that right? Is that necessarily exactly what happened, or is it just that history is written by the victors? And just in the chat, I can't remember who was putting there. So Liat Rubenfield saying, same as in England, Matilda was written out of history. Yeah, so this is a reference to there was a period of English history that George R. R. Martin he's admitted it. A lot of the Dance of the Dragons is based on this period.
The anarchy.
The anarchy, yeah. And there were, I'm not going to go through all of the parallels, but there were two. There was Stephen and Matilda, and Matilda was effectively queen of most of England for a huge chunk of time, but then got written out of history. If you ever go back, who were the rulers of England? And yeah, we've had a few queens, so it's not like every female leader gets written out of history, but it's like there she was. It was just, you'll just see Stephen there, and so it's like she was literally just, and that is an inspiration for George R. R. Martin. So he has taken it from our own histories, and then he's almost inviting us to look back at, are there other bits of our own histories that we should be looking at that maybe they were written by the people who won, and maybe we should be listening to the voices that we otherwise wouldn't be hearing from.
Yeah, I think like what you were saying about people being written out too is like the reasons why Rhaenyra was considered a bad ruler. You could argue that a dude did worse things and he wasn't written out of history. So that's like, it's kind of, a good way to like reenact things that actually happened, like in English history, with the dance onto a TV show, but then add like a spin to it. Like, oh, they ride dragons. So he loves pulling from history.
Yeah, and sort of linking this in with Callie Summers, really interesting question in the chat, sort of linking in with something we were talking about a little bit earlier, saying, what do you think about the theory that Daenerys the Dreamer, this is the person who had the dream that about the doom of Valyria, so the Targaryens left and then it blew up and they were the only ones who survived. What do you think of the theory that she actually had the A Song of Ice and Fire dream, and the Targaryens engineered the doom to ensure that they had the only dragons so that they could hold Westeros? So I think I'm going to throw this one over to you, Mark, because I know you love this kind of like coming at things from different angles. But do you think it's possible? We've only ever been told this one side of Daenerys the Dreamer. She's like, she had this vision, Doom of Valyria, let's get out. But could the Targaryens just be reinventing their own history to make it look like they're the good guys rather than just they wanted to conquer and then they've come up with some justification for it?
Short answer, no, because we heard about the Doom of Valyria from other people who have nothing to do with the Targaryens. People that Daenerys have interacted with that live over, that are from regions like where ancient Valyria had once occupied, right? So when she's in Meereen and Scar and like the Red Waste, right, she hears what the Valyrians did. And so that may be the case. The fun answer would be slander. Watch your mouth, Targaryen loyalist over here. So, but no, I mean, that's a really interesting take. The thing with that is that would just be like, well, then are all Targaryens evil? You know what I mean? Like,
well,
you know,
yeah. So I think the suggestion is not that the Doom didn't happen. I think we accept the Doom happened, but it's just like maybe the Targaryens caused the Doom and then rewrote history so that it looks like the reason why they survived and no one else did was not that they nefariously killed everyone else, but it's just that they had this vision and escaped.
well,
and you're going to say no because you're a Targaryen
because
loyalist.
histories are written by because histories are written by the victor kind of thing. That's what they're saying. They're like turning it around. Here's the thing: you could say that, but then you could also say the same thing you'd say about the dance. It's like, oh, it wasn't caused by Viserys and Rhaenyra. It was caused by Jaehaerys and Alicent for having so many heirs and then outliving them, right? And not dying off so that someone else could rule the throne and then their kids, like forcing a faster succession crisis, which would burn through people who would most likely cause all the dragons to die, which is like the big Targaryen downfall. I've literally never even thought about Dany's the Dreamer being like, like, or I guess her father, Aenar the Exile, being involved, which it could be. It could be because George has said before that the Targaryens are not a high up house in the Valyrian freehold. They were more like shepherds. They're like lower down on the rung of stuff. Like there's more families that had a higher rank in the Valyrian society. So yeah, as much as we've seen people backstabbing in Westeros to advance their position either towards the Iron Throne, towards ruling a certain region in Westeros, for sure they could have definitely been doing that before they even came over, but it adds an extra layer of like, okay, so they might be the bad guys, like, because why would George make them? I mean, I guess not, because everybody's playing the Game of Thrones. Maybe it was maybe it was the game of palaces in Valyria, right? So maybe like whichever person was closest with the blood mages, had the most influence, would like maybe have the best access to power and money in Valyria. And one of the ways that the Targaryens moved up caused the Doom. Is that what they're saying? Like one of the ways that the Targaryen was kind of playing the game over there, like help maybe intentionally or unintentionally cause the Doom of Valyria kind of thing?
Yes. I think it's a great theory. I mean, I think probably this is not the case. I think probably what we've been told is true. I think that probably the Faceless Men caused it. I've got one of my personal favorite videos of my own that I did ages ago is tying up a whole load of random things and coming up with a theory about who it was who caused the Doom of Valyria. So do go check out if you want that, because it would take me far too long to explain now. Somebody in the chat just said, am I right in thinking there was also a female pope once? Yes, and there will be, I'm sure, people in the chat who will be able to provide links.
There's a female pope? Is that what you said?
Well, this is, as I say, historians' apologies. I'm going to give a very short version of this, which may well have some errors, but yes, there was once a female pope that allegedly they only discovered when she became pregnant. And since then, when somebody gets elected pope, they have
you
to
ruined the game there, Pope. All you had to do was drink moon tea.
But
and they
sit in a chair, and this sounds made up, but I
totally believe it. I watch a lot of history documentaries.
It's got a hole in the bottom of the chair, and somebody's job is to make sure that the Pope is indeed male before they confirm to the world that this person has been made Pope. So
that's like Daenerys. That's like Daenerys when his daughter Zolorak family, his mom or whoever wants to inspect her genitals to ensure something, and she's like, no, and then she literally goes, tell him to inspect himself. Like that.
Yeah, so
like
Pope Joan, there we
lines.
go. I knew there would be some people in the chat who would know this better. The Pope Joan, Google it. Don't just listen to me. This is a fascinating little bit of history that if you ever want to, and quite hilarious in its own little way. I'm sure at the time it was dealt with in very serious ways, but looking back, it's Pope Joan. Google it. Let's go to another question from Diego Godoy saying, "Hola,
someone
Robert.
Make that a sound clip for me, please. I want to make that a button on my channel. Google it, because whenever I say yes, I want to make that. I swear to God, I'm gonna try to timestamp this part so I can come back and I'm gonna make that a button and have like your face pop up whenever I hit it. Oh, that's funny. That was, dude. I swear to God, I just died laughing, and I'm like, I should still be laughing. Google it, Pope Joe.
Well, don't believe me, believe Google. Diego Godoy saying, what were your thoughts on Larys Strong in the previous episode? He is portrayed much younger than I had imagined, but I liked it. He seems cunning and smart. Thanks. So Larys Strong is a character that I was really looking forward to. Other than Mushroom, he was the character I most have been looking forward to in this. And you might have missed his entrance if you only watched it once and you weren't really picking. If you had other things going on in the room at the time, you might not have spotted. But he was there. The Strongs were introduced, and then he comes up with he's got the club foot, and while everyone else is out on the hunt, and then you picture the scene, the women are all talking about politics, and he comes along and says, "Do you mind if I sit down here?" And they say, yeah, that's fine. And he sits down and then says nothing. And that is his entire. But every now and then you see that he's paying attention to what's going on. I would highly recommend. I retweeted it. If you probably one of the easier ways to find it is Joe Magician, who was on here a few weeks ago. He did a fantastic Twitter thread just pointing out exactly what was going on here. He should be a character everybody ignores. And he can hear things, and he doesn't say much, and this is how he's learning things. But so go and check that out. But Mark, what's your take on Larys Strong?
Okay, I think I've said this. I hate to self plug myself here, but I did this like a little bit about how it's funny that he's pretending in that world, right? That it sucks that he's being left behind because he can't go hunt with the men, right? But really, this is exactly what he wants. He wants to be sitting there and listening to all of these people who, yes, are gossiping women or whatever you want to call it in Westeros or whatever, but they have the most information. They have the most power. They're the richest people. So really, if you want information and you want power, you should be around them and you should be listening. He's basically just being unassuming. But I have a question for you. Do you think, so like Varys is literally Larys, right? It's very similar, right? Varys' backstory, nothing, not even anywhere as close. At least for what we hear, Varys tells us he's like this person who had, his penis removed, tossed into a flame. That traumatic event turned him into this crazy thief who stole information over in Pentos. I always think it's Pentos, but I think it's because Illyrio Mopatis gets it wrong when he's talking to Tyrion, pretending that he knows Varys. But anyway, that's a crazy backstory. And that is why Varys was everybody's favorite character. My question for you is, what do you think they're going to do for Larys to make it? Because having a club foot and not being able to be a manly man is not good enough. He has to have like mystical. And then also, we all know what's going to happen at Harrenhal and what continues to happen at Harrenhal. And any family that occupies Harrenhal has mystical. So there's something, either they meet. That was my question. What do you think is going to be?
Well, I can tell you what I hope is going to be is that they just carry on like this, in that he hardly says anything, and what you just see that from episode to episode he just like appears. He'll be sitting in the small council. We may just see him skulking around in the background somewhere, and he will just say a few things every now and then, so we are aware of who he is and what his job is. But you have to go back and literally join up the dots to figure out what he's up to each time. this person did such and such a thing because Larys was there and overheard that thing, and he must have told the king about. That's what I want from him. I actually want him to be this character who sinks into the background. Varys is very he's there, he's very present, because the way that he gets information is that he then goes off and he puts on a disguise, and he's got other people going off and doing it. And because everybody knows what he looks like, that means that they don't think, when he's dressed up as the jailer or whatever, they don't think it's him, because that's such a different person. But I think Larys cannot hide the fact that he's got a clubfoot, so he has to do it differently. And he has to be there, but deliberately just sinking into the background. So that's what I hope they just carry on down this route. And he's not a huge character, but you see the impact of his actions.
So kind of like, I'm sure you've seen WandaVision, right? So kind of like it was, what you call it, all along kind of thing. Do you think that's a real clubfoot? He's just like, oh, check it out, I can't walk. I think that's an act. And you reminded me, Varys is a mummer, so a lot of he can make himself look like a knight and like someone who will beat you up. He can even make himself taller. Varys is like an expert mummer. So what if that's what it is with Larys? And then, like you're saying, we don't find out until afterwards, because he's like either at a part of all these things. But I think they'll have to do that, and that's why I wanted to get your take on that. Just like as a fan of the show, like pick your mind kind of thing, because he doesn't have little birds. So he's got to get his information hands on. He's got to be the one to do it.
Yeah.
I think the clubfoot might actually be a hoax. I don't think his club, I think it may be maimed, but I don't think it's that bad. I think that's part of his act, because that's like.
Well, I thought, and I would have to go back and have a look at it, but I thought that it was a wrong angle, if you know what I mean, which would be quite a hard thing to fake. For
like inward foot. Like this.
I thought that's what it was, rather than it being. When I read the books, I imagined it just being quite a sort of.
Oh yeah, for sure. Because he even says,
shaped.
Yeah, he even says at the end. This is a book spoiler. This happened in the books. I'm good, right?
Yeah. Go for it.
Yeah. He says, can you take my foot off before you kill me? Right? I won't say who kills him, but I will say that. Literally, the clubfoot says, take my clubfoot off. So maybe he actually is me. Maybe I'm just getting too tinfoily.
No, I mean, I think I would have to go back and have a look. But I think, and maybe to the chat, somebody will have been paying attention. I think it's an odd angle coming out from his leg, the kind of thing
I can actually do that. I can actually turn my foot sideways like that. And I can stick it the other way outward.
Please never show me.
No, I wasn't going to show you. I'm just saying it's possible if that's part of his act. Like, that's why I wanted to set it up with Varys. Remember, he can like literally, Tyrion is like, holy Varys? Like, he doesn't even realize Varys has, like, in the book, Storm of Swords. It's when he sets Shay up in a manse, and Varys is taking him back and forth, right? At one point he sees Varys, like Shay knows that it's Varys, but Tyrion didn't even realize it, because Varys is just so good at changing his whole demeanor. Whereas the Varys that we all know is this perfumed dude who doesn't have any calluses on his hands. He's like this buttery, like this bubbly personality type, you know what I mean? But then when he puts on a disguise, he does it so well. And I just thought maybe that's why Larys is kind of like, there's going to be a mystical connection to Harrenhal, because we have Alice Rivers, so we know there's going to be some stuff.
Yeah, well, actually, I'd quite like to talk about Harrenhal in just one moment. Just the chat is being not necessarily helpful. Saying Morning Throner says, I looked for this last episode, it looked fakeable to me. And then Harry Hutt next comment saying it's almost facing backwards. So I don't know. I think it wasn't clear from what we've seen. So hopefully maybe we'll get him again in a future episode, and we'll be able to sort of say whether it looks like it might be a fakeable thing or not. But
yeah, because you could get double. So like, I hate to brag here, but I skateboarded a lot growing up. You know, that's a big thing. So I wasn't that good, but I did it a lot. And one of the things I would do is fall all the time. And I fell on my ankle, dude. I would constantly roll my ankle. And because of that, I can literally invert my feet like this and walk. Not comfortably, but long enough to be like, hey, check out my clubfoot. Can I sit down and listen to all of you guys' secrets and learn from you, and eventually maybe use those secrets against you if I'm Larys the club? Like, just for a second, we got to see more of it. And I think the chat, like you said, they could intentionally be doing that because they think that maybe I'm messing with you and they're just trying to like troll or something. But no, I thought I initially, just because I didn't even say that in my video, because I was like, people are going to make fun of me in the comments for saying that. I just thought I would bring it up here because it was the perfect time. I wanted to ask you. I wanted to know your thoughts because maybe it's not that crazy. Bars do the same thing, and this story is
could be.
bars.
I would have to again. I'd have to look at it again. So that was my initial thought, was that they went without it being sort of like a. Anyway, maybe it's fakeable. I think that the whether or not it is actually not the point so much as the fact that his character he was soft spoken. He was not drawing attention to himself. He was not speaking much at all. He was placing himself in the best position to see everything and to hear everything, and that's exactly what I want him to be. The attention of the family is on his father, who's on the small council, and on his brother, who's like the strongest and greatest fighter in the kingdom. So he is the one who is just there, and everybody ignores him. But you raised Harrenhal. I'd love to talk about this briefly, because we have seen in one of the trailers, we've seen a shot of Harrenhal. And it's quite, as you talked about, it's got this curse all the way through the history of sort of the world of Ice and Fire. It's got this curse that any family who owns it, any person who owns it, will come to some horrendous fate. And towards the end of the Dance of the Dragons, we do get this fantastic character called Alice Rivers, who appears there, who clearly is some sort of magic user. Do you think the place itself is magical, or is it just a curse that people have made up to try and make it sound spookier? Do you think there is actually a magic in it somehow?
Right. So it's like in America, I'm sure you guys have this in Europe, right? So there'd be like a Native American burial ground. If you do anything to disturb it, you're going to be cursed. It's cursed because you messed up the area. Anywhere where a crazy tragic event happened, where a bunch of people died in Westeros, there's going to be some magic to it. We have the Pact at the Isle of Faces, right? That may not necessarily be a bunch of death, but there could have been initially. We have Battle Isle and then Old Town. That's the oldest town in Westeros being formed there. And then we have, it makes sense to me that we would have not necessarily, because I'm like racking my brain. I'm thinking of Danelle Lawson, right? So Mad Danelle Lawson, she is said to have bathed in blood, right? We have Alice Rivers supposedly being the milkmaid to not just Harwin and Larys, but also Lionel, their father, and that she doesn't really age, and that she supposedly has a child with I won't with Aemon, right? And because of that, there's just too many things going on. Like initially, the guy who lived there is this Ironborn lad who's not even supposed to be in the Riverlands, but he, in order to construct Harrenhal, steals from the area around him. And he's like, hey, you know what? Everybody near me, pay me, give me some of your stones, give me some of your workers, give me some of your people, and if you don't, I'm going to kill you, because they're Ironborn. The Ironborn are terrible in this story for the most part. There's some good ones, but that, right? And then you have Aegon coming over, who supposedly had this dream about the White Walkers coming, and then, Harren the Black defied him and said, no, you have dragons, but that's out there. I'm behind my walls. You can't do nothing. Then he killed everybody, right? So, like, he stole from the land, and then you have people dying there, and then you have a bunch of magical related people associating themselves there. There's no way there's not a curse or something with Harrenhal. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, I mean, I've always taken it that they chopped down. Apparently, they chopped down a whole load of weirwood trees,
exactly,
in order to make it,
and that's not.
Yeah, part of the building was made from dead weirwood tree, and obviously this is right next to the Isle of Faces, so it kind of makes sense that there might be some kind of curse. And some people were saying in the chat, is there a sort of a magical after effect of Dragonfire? Because the thing, obviously, about Harrenhal is that within a matter of days of it being completed, Balerion the Black Dread melted it with the fire that hit his flames, and this is not just like burnt it a bit. This was the way that George R. R. Martin describes it is the stones were not just blackened, but they kind of melted and dripped down. So when you get the characters walking around it, it's just like you get bits of melted stone when they're climbing up the towers, that's the level of heat we're talking at here. If there is any kind of after effect from Dragonfire, that actually was one of the things I was thinking about if you take you back to when I was talking about the Iron Throne, because the Iron Throne was forged by Balerion's flames. So if you were going to have some kind of magic in there, then having Dragonfire, forging it, making it is a good starting point. Was there anything else you're wanting to? And I'm sorry, I'm just aware that we've been going for a couple of hours, Mark. Do shout if you need to go at any point, by the way.
No, I'm good. I just have to pee really bad.
If you can hold it, we'll be finished within half an hour if your bladder's strong enough for that. Otherwise, feel free to just sort of nip off for a bit.
Yeah, I was about to say my bathroom is right there. It's just right here. I just gotta go out in the hallway real quick.
Okay.
But the one more thing about Harrenhal. So remember how you said the weirwood trees being stolen from the land, right? Hair in the Black, right? Also, sorry, that was loud. The Ironborn isn't the bones of Naga, right? Which is the place where they have the King's Mood. Isn't that supposed to be weirwood? Right? Didn't the person isn't Naga's bones really just a ship made out of weirwoods? It seems like anything we're like, that's literally what George tells us what started the war between the First Men and the Children of the Forest, because they started cutting down their sacred trees. If anybody's ever done anything to cut down some sort of tree, and maybe there was a weirwood tree in the place of the Iron Throne initially, or where on Aegon's High Hill, right? Maybe there was a bunch of weirwoods that had got cut down. They show one in the Godswood on the TV show, but there isn't one. It's a great oak in the books. It's a great oak. Cersei says, although there might be a weirwood tree, but I don't think so, because Sansa doesn't pray at it. It's a great oak, right? It's a big heart oak tree or something, right? So on the TV show, that's hard to prove, but maybe anywhere where there's a place that weirwood trees have been cut down, there's just an automatic curse, because like you're supposed to respect the land. That's one thing. George wrote this book very much being a hippie from the 60s, or in the 70s. So he's going to work that into, of course, like you're supposed to take care of nature because nature takes care of you. It's kind of what I've been learning give myself some more shout out here. I'm actually a gardener. Have you seen my watermelons and my peppers, man? I can't believe I have like 6 melons that are like this big outside. But anyway, that teaches you to appreciate the land. And that's what these people were doing, not appreciating it. So they're cursed. Anytime anybody's ever done anything against a weirwood tree, there's probably some curse associated with it, whether that be burning it or cutting it down. Aegon's family was probably cursed from destroying Harrenhal, because maybe the weirwood trees, like we know there's supposedly weirwood trees that were used in the forming the basis of the wall, right? So maybe the weirwood trees that were cut down to form the Great Hall at Harrenhal, which you got to realize, when Arya's in Harrenhal, she's like saying like, this makes Winterfell look like nothing. You know what I mean? And like Jaime says about this one girl that he takes captive with him, he's like, oh, every castle that she ever sees is going to look like nothing because she's grown up at Harrenhal. So Harrenhal is very much the best. At one point was just the flyest castle. Like, I don't know another way to put it. Like it was against Mother Nature, and it was very sinful to make, but Harrenhal is massive. So maybe when Aegon burned it down, he sinned initially, right? And it's not that there's something special with Dragonfire. Like, it's different colors and stuff, which is really exciting when you read about it. Like Balerion's flame was black. So maybe there's some special magic properties to that. But maybe in this case, Aegon unintentionally cursed himself by killing a bunch of people that were already established in Westeros, also burning trees unintentionally, like burning the weirwood that had been taken by Hair in the Black or something. I'm going down a rabbit hole here.
No, absolutely. It's because if you need to go down somewhere else.
I'm going to go pee real quick.
Well, Mark's gone. Actually, I just wanted to. I don't think he can hear. He's not his thing. While he's gone, his channel is this close to 100,000 subscribers. So, guys, if you've been enjoying what Mark's had to say, do just go to his channel and subscribe to it. Let's see whether we can push him up a little bit closer to that. So I think he's on something like 98,000. So if we can push him up a little bit, that would be absolutely fantastic. But let's just have a very Quick flick through the chat. Alice Rivers should have her own show, says South London Reseller. Yes, she's an amazing character. Almost certainly will be appearing later on in this show. Cutting down weirwood trees is definitely bad mojo. Yes, Carl Karsnark. Let's go to another question from one of my patrons. Emma Scheiman saying, I'm curious how the show will move forward after Rhaenyra and Viserys' conversation in the last episode, in which Viserys told Rhaenyra that she can choose her own husband. It doesn't seem to me that Rhaenyra would have chosen Laenor for herself. Will this match be a reaction to rumours about Rhaenyra and Criston Cole? Will it end up being an arranged marriage after all? If so, what was the point of showing us that moment between Rhaenyra and Viserys? Yeah, so the welcome back, Mark. The question is all about the marriage, which will happen. Again, spoilers. I should say we have book spoilers. We do not know. Neither of us have seen into the future of the show, so we don't know exactly what's going to be there. So it's not show spoilers. But we've got Rhaenyra marrying Laenor Velaryon, Corlys and Rhaenys' son, which presumably she wouldn't have picked for herself. But on the show, we've got Viserys saying, on your mother's grave, or words to that effect, then you can choose who you want to marry. So something's going to change here. So there's circumstances will definitely shift. It has to be something to do with what we've already been talking about. I would argue this whole Rhaenyra, Criston Cole, Damon, whether it's a love triangle, Damon definitely does something or is accused of doing something that leads to him being banished. But what do you think? Where do you think the show's going to go with getting us to this point about getting the two of those sort of married, Rhaenyra and Laenor? Where do you think? What's the reason there if she's been told that she can marry who she wants?
Well, Alicent said, like, you have to make Rhaenyra think it's her choice, right? To Viserys. So Viserys and Alicent are kind of just gonna subtly manipulate Rhaenyra into thinking Corlys is the best choice. Really, Corlys is the only one that's being presented to her, that's going to be presented to her, that rides a dragon. And also, they definitely have an arrangement in the books as well, because Corlys is gay. Like, I'm sorry, Laenor is gay. So, yeah. So she basically gets to sleep with who she wants to, and he does, right? And they may just do their duty, right, in the marriage bed, right? So that's probably that dynamic. And the show's making it seem like her father and Alicent have just kind of offhandedly manipulated her into choosing Laenor. But I don't think it's going to be like cut and dry like in the books where he says, oh yeah, and they proposed them to get married, and the reason why was because House Velaryon had already been scorned twice with Rhaenys in the Great Council 101 AC, and also Corlys with Laenor, right, and Laena, and then Rhaenys herself, right. They kept getting scorned, so that's why the match is set up in the books, and Viserys obviously approves of it because of that. It's not going to be that cut and dry, and also the books doesn't make it that neither. Fire and Blood doesn't make it that either, because like I said, it's pretty much hinted at that there is an arrangement, right? So Grandmaster Mello says, if fish is served, like he said, like, I don't like fish, you know what I mean? But when fish is served, I eat it, kind of thing. So he basically said, oh, they had an arrangement that they could do whatever they wanted to, you know what I mean? Because both of them probably agree that it's not fair that they have to be forced into doing something they don't like, you know what I mean? Especially Laenor, you could see, or me, I think I'm allowed to say it now, Ryan Condom, Gail Stopachnik cast me to ride Seafolk. That's me. I'm also going to be playing Adam Velaryon and Alan Velaryon, right? Both of them.
Wow.
So yeah, it's
crazy. You are blessed.
It's crazy, man. They gave me like $2 million, but I said, no, you know what? I'm going to do this for free. And then they kept the money. But no, yeah. It seems like there's an arrangement, right? Don't you think?
I think that's definitely where they're going to end up. The question is, does she choose him because she thinks, okay, if I have to marry, this will be in this kind of like we don't want to actually sleep with each other. But kitties. So this is the problem: is you bring a cat into this, and immediately everybody will talk about the cat. But the arrangement that did she choose to do that, knowing that was going to be the case, or was she forced into it and just decided to make the best of a bad thing, as it were?
Well, it's a rumor too that Rhaenyra doesn't like the company of girls. So that's basically George telling us, oh, everybody knows this dude doesn't like women. You know what I mean? Everybody knows that. So obviously Rhaenyra is probably going to find out about that. And you know what? I bet you Damon's the one who says, this guy might be your best choice. You know what I mean? He may manipulate her that way. And then also backtracking, because remember something you were saying about how it will go down when we first started the live stream. You were saying how it will go down between Damon and Rhaenyra. Will it be like trying to teach her how to do stuff to make herself more attractive to Kristen Cole? I don't think Damon will be involved with luring her out to the Street of Silk at all. I think Kristen Cole, I think she may just be mad at her dad, because that's what the show keeps doing. They keep making her and Viserys have these arguments about what she's supposed to do and what she's not supposed to do. She's going to do, like, she's going to sneak. She probably just sneaks out on her own and tries to go find Kristen Cole. Can't. And like we see her in the promo, she's like running. She looks scared, right? And then there's that guy that does the crazy magic trick, right? I don't know. I think Damon might be innocent. Is what I'm getting at. I don't even think Damon lured her out there. I think she came to Damon. I think Damon was just minding his own business, being king of the Damon's just being king of the narrow
seas. Such a Damon apologist.
Yeah,
I love it.
He's just king of the narrow seas. Like, hey, and then like the scene right behind you, right? Yeah. That scene happens, and in it, Damon's like, all right, well, I'll see you later. I'm gonna go hang out at my brothel. Make sure you go put up Syrax and don't follow me. Definitely don't follow me. And then she follows him anyway. Damon's like, he did his job. He's like, look, niece, stay away from the Street of Silk. Kristen Cole definitely hangs out there. I know you love him, but you don't want to go there. Don't go there. Don't try. You know what I mean? Damon's a good guy. Damon's like
Wow, you heard it here first. Damon is a good guy. So George R. R. Martin doesn't write black and white characters. He only does grey characters, except for Daemon Targaryen, who is the hero of the whole thing. You heard it here first. As suspected, everybody in the chat just immediately started talking about a cat. That's fine. People are loving your comment. The hang out at my brothel. Yeah, exactly. And reflective rambling. Yes, I will. Again, it has been a little while since I did that. Do not worry. Let's go to. I've got two, maybe three more questions from my patrons. So let's quickly rattle through these, and then we'll try and pick up a couple of things from the chat before we end. Zvibo, I wondered how you feel about the pacing of the series so far. I totally understand they need to get to the actual Dance of the Dragons sooner rather than later, but I've been incredibly impressed by Millie Alcock and Emily Carey, who play young Alicent and Rhaenyra. And I can't help but wish we got to see more of them than just a couple more episodes. Are you worried that the show might make the same mistakes that Game of Thrones did and rush things? So on... In terms of pacing and whether it's, whether they might rush it, I've really liked the pacing on this. I have to say, I think they've got, certainly season one, they've got this exactly right. They appear to be devoting an entire season to the build up to the dance, and I think that was the right decision. So we'll end somewhere around the outbreak of war. Exactly which moment they choose for that, we could speculate on, but it's just... this is the build-up. I think that's the right base. My concern is for what happens next. If initially I'd thought 5 seasons, you could do the dance, including the Hour of the Wolf and everything at the end of it in 4 seasons. Great. Then having heard from, I think it was Ryan Condal or Condal, I don't know, whatever it is we're now pronouncing it as.
I think he said Condal. Maybe that was
Condal.
Like Condal. Like Roald Dahl kind of like the.
I will have to do that. I do like to pronounce people's names correctly when I can, and I have been saying Ryan Condal, so I will try and find out so I can pronounce it. But anyway, he said on a red carpet that I'm sure you've heard this idea that this is going to turn, not just be something about the Dance of the Dragons, but House of the Dragon is going to be covering all different parts of their Targaryen family tree. So after this, we might go and do Aegon's Conquest, say, and then do something else. And he sort of said something like 3 seasons or 3 or 4 seasons, which is like suddenly makes me think, okay, so they're squashing it. I can just about understand trying to fit it into 3 more seasons, so have 4 seasons overall. I think less than that for me probably would be squashing it too much, given how much time they've given for season 1. But what's your take? How many seasons do you think we need to tell this story up to the point at which the Hour of the Wolf and Cregan Stark heads back up north again?
Well, remember, I want to see Sanduk the Shadow, and that has to get into the Regency of Aegon III. So that's 7 seasons, but we're not going to get that. So probably like 3 or 4. I think it's perfect. I've always kind of said 4 is perfect because you have 1 season doing the build-up. And really, it's not even a whole season doing the build-up because, like you said, we having a time jump coming up. So it's like half a season. And I am kind of worried because we got so attached to these actors, right? But also, you got to realize that the people who are coming in, right, so Emma Darcy and Olivia Cook, they have to be amazing because they're basically taking over someone who, yes, they look like them, but ultimately, at least the first episode where we get the new actresses and actors, right, it's gonna be hard because we just saw you for 4 episodes or however many episodes it is, right, 5 episodes, whatever, as these people. So we expect a lot, right? And I think that they wouldn't have chose to do it this way if it wasn't the right way. I think this is the best way to do it. So I think 4 seasons, first season build up, second season, we could probably plot the whole thing out, but that would be like 5-hour stream. We'd miss the episode.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's definitely doable, and I have done this in previous streams, worked out where I would end it. I mean, roughly speaking, you could have this next season leading up to the Blacks capturing King's Landing, and then the season after that, you could do leading up to Rhaenyra having to flee King's Landing, and then the third or season 4 in total, you could then have all of the stuff ending up with the Hour of the Wolf. That would be how you could.
Sounds like you support the Blacks because you didn't name any of the good things the Greens did.
Yes, because I can't think of any good things the Greens did. Oh. But it's just teasing. But I think that this is the at a very high level. The start of the war, the Greens are they're in the ascendancy. They've got King's Landing. They've got all of the things that make it look like you're the king. They've got the sword Blackfire. They've got the crowning by the High Septon. They've got all of those things going on. So it would make a good season arc to take it up to the point where suddenly it looks like it's going the other way. And it would similarly make a really good season arc to take it from that point where it looks like the Blacks are in control to a point where actually everything's suddenly gone up in flames again, and we don't know who's on top. Yeah. And then the final season is just chaos, basically. So that kind of works for me on that kind of basis. I do just have to say, because Millie Alcock, Emily Carey, absolutely, I thought they have been complete breakout stars for me in this. I didn't think that I would like those 2 characters. I thought I was going to be amazed by Damon and Viserys and people like that. Then those 2 characters, I think they've done a standout job. So yeah, I think they did absolutely brilliantly there. Sort of a follow-up question from Zvibo also, talking about the Weirwood tree I've got here. We touched on it a moment ago. You're saying we've seen, Zvibo says, we've seen the previously unknown King's Landing Weirwood tree a couple of times now. Do you think it'll play some further role in the series? It feels a very deliberate inclusion. And this is interesting because, as you say, it's not there. When you read A Song of Ice and Fire, it's not there. It's not. Sansa is in the Godswood and notes the lack of actual heart tree. I think Ned does as well, of actual Weirwood tree. So it's not there then. Including it here, and they didn't have one that we saw in Game of Thrones, the TV show. They're including it here very obviously. It's been there very clearly, and this is now 3 different episodes. I think we've seen it. If this is a still from episode 4, it seems very obviously there. They want us to know that they've changed a thing. So it's for one of two reasons that I can see. I'd love your thoughts on this. Just 1 second. It's either because they're going to use this in some way in this season, this show, and they're just kind of setting it up for us, or they're thinking very long term and thinking, okay, we've got this anthology show at some later point, because we don't know how it disappeared. At some later point, a person cut it down. Maybe Baelor the Blessed cut it down. Maybe it gets burned down when somebody attacks King's Landing in the dance. I don't know. But they're setting it up for much later, us seeing how it gets destroyed. But what's your thoughts? Why do you think they have included? Because they didn't have to. They could have just had a nice outdoorsy area. They didn't have to make it a weirwood.
Yeah, I think, okay, so the weirwood itself, the weirwood tree is white, right? White bark with red fire leaves. That's a Targaryen on fire. Targaryen's hair on fire. They have a connection, I'm telling you. The Targaryens and the old gods and the old tongue is just Valyrian. John's never heard anybody speak, not High Valyrian. Maybe it's a form of Low Valyrian that's a bastardized with the common tongue, and John just doesn't understand it, right? Or maybe with a tongue that existed in Westeros with the Children of the Forest, and then somehow they whatever, right? So two things. They didn't. Ryan Condal has for sure knows that there's no weirwood tree there, so he's put it in there, like you said, for a reason. They're setting up something earlier, and watching it get destroyed is going to be crazy. They could be setting it up there so that when we see the story of Bloodraven, when they eventually do the Blackfire prophecies, or the Blackfire rebellions through Dunk and Egg, right? If we get something like that, this tree would have some significance then too. Like, basically, Rhaenyra, the way she dies is very poetic, right? We know she gets eaten, right? So what if, instead of having it happen on Dragonstone, has to happen on Dragonstone, right? But it doesn't. What if it happens in front of this weirwood tree? Because initially, she forced Samwell, the musician, to keep playing Under the Eye of the Dragon, and literally, there's a tree with a face that's known for watching everything behind. So I don't know. There's so much going, dude. There's too much. Ryan Condal knows too much, so it's definitely there for a reason. I just haven't figured it out yet.
And at a slightly more base level, what this is saying is all of these things we've seen, that this scene behind me here, the scenes we had earlier in the season, the Weirwood Network have seen that, because the Weirwood tree has seen this. So it's like, okay, they know what's going on. This is where people are going to have their secret conversations, and the Weirwood Network know it. So are they going to play this in later? I hope so. Some just kind of hint that this isn't just about the Targaryens. Yes, it's a TV show about the Targaryens, but it's not just about the Targaryens. Let's go to, this is my last question from one of my patrons, then I will pick up a couple of things from the chat. Sean Doyle saying, first time question as a new patron. Welcome. Welcome to my Patreon. This is one of the perks of being a patron, is I will always prioritize questions from my patrons. Great streams recently with the double teaming of Rings of Power and House of the Dragon. Yes, for those who just watch my House of the Dragon content, I'm also covering Rings of Power, and I do Tolkien videos more broadly. And with the two series running at the same time that you can fully commentate on and provide content as we watch them, do you dread the time that comes when both of these are over and there isn't maybe as much to directly tear apart? Or do you look forward to those times when you have more time to dive back into the lore and text? Well, I can speak for myself. I'd love to know what, Mark, your plans are beyond this as well. But I'm loving the fact that my two favorite fantasy worlds have both got a TV show on at the moment. It's just like, this is nirvana for me. This is amazing. So the fact that I can be producing videos about both of them is brilliant. Yes, there will come a time when those shows finish, and we're going to have probably 18 months until either of them return. There are other things that will be there. I will be covering The Witcher when it comes back. They finished, I should probably have said this at the beginning of the show, they finished filming Witcher Season 3. They normally take something like 6-7 months for post-production, so we're looking sometime around the spring of next year for Witcher Season 3, and the Witcher spin-off is probably going to be ready for Christmas. That's Witcher Blood Origins. So we've got more stuff to be looking forward to. And Willow, incidentally, if you didn't know, they've made a Willow series, which is going to be on Disney, and that's out in November. So there's a lot of stuff coming up. But I am really looking forward to being able to pick through all of this stuff that we've got there. We talked about the blood magicians, but we haven't even mentioned the fact that the throwaway comment from Viserys when he says that the dragon lords lived right in next to the volcano, the source of their magic. It's just so what? Hang on a moment. This is the source of the magic is the volcano. Does that mean that if you live on Dragonstone, you get more magical powers as a dragon lord? Does that mean a thing? What about all of the Aegon's vision and what are the implications of that? There's so much that we can just pick through over the course of the next 12 months, 18 months or whatever. So there will be a lot more theory/lore videos from me coming over the period after the show is finished. And who knows, maybe we'll even have another book from George R. R. Martin. No promises, no guesses. I've given up trying to predict when it's going to happen, but maybe it will. But Mark, what about you? I know you're covering, I should have said, you're covering the show, obviously. So if you want to see more from Mark and love House of the Dragon, do go and check out his channel, link down in the description. But once the show's finished, what's the plan?
Well, I covered the leaks. So like any kind of photos that come out while they're filming, right? And then I'll keep making. Hopefully, the show makes more people want to learn about what exactly happens in the books because it'll take so long for season 2 to come out. So anybody who's hesitant on wanting to know spoilers, Fire and Blood came out in 2018, so it's a 4-year-old going on 5-year-old book, right? It's not spoilers anymore because it's been out. It'd be like being mad at the ending of Titanic or something, even though Titanic came out in the 90s. But similar idea. It's just hopefully that makes like more people want to watch those kinds of videos. And I'm over on YouTube again at Sir Hunt's Reviews. Also, I don't think I've said this. I'm gonna be going live after the episode too tonight. When it ends. I know it's gonna be late, but I was about to say I would love for you to come over onto my channel. We could do like the same thing for after the episode, but it's gonna be late. It's gonna be really.
It is. I would love to, but I'm over here. It airs at 2:00 in the morning, which means it finishes at gone 3 because these episodes are like over an hour long. So I'm an old man these days, and the idea of sort of like staying up till what would then be at least 4 or 5 in the morning, and then writing my breakdown video.
I remember I convinced you to do it one time or maybe twice back in the day, like during season 7 or season 8 or so. No, it wasn't season 8. It was probably season 7. I convinced you to do it.
Did I come on? Wow.
Yeah, you did a couple times. And I was like, holy shit, dude. It's really, and you did pretty much the whole stream too. So it was really like 4 in the morning over there. So you definitely, yeah.
I was a younger man, fewer of these grey hairs going on, I can tell you. But so Mark Sir Hunt's, if you're wanting, I don't do spoilers on this channel, but if you do want that kind of behind the scenes stuff, and that's where we got a lot of the early shots of what Matt Smith looked like and things like that. So that's the place to go for that. But let's just have a quick flick through the chat. Callie Summers saying, speaking of checking under papal robes earlier, we were talking about peeping under papal robes, all on topic, I promise you. Did anyone check on Varys in the books? It's a disguise no one would question because it would be humiliating for most men to admit. Well, Mark, you read the books many times a year, or listen to them many times a year. Have you...
Only recently. Because like I even used to say that on my channel, like I would only pick Tyrion's chapters, like, and then I would be like, okay, I don't want to read Cersei, she's boring, right? Because I'd never read it, right? So I'd be like, what's Jon Snow doing? Let me find out what happens in Jon Snow's last couple of chapters. So that's kind of what I did for years, and it's very obvious if you watch those videos because I would be like, in the books, this one thing happens, and I wouldn't even be like, what specific book. Right. And I wouldn't even be like, what specific chapter even. Like I would kind of know a small part of it. And it was because I would just lazily be like, oh, yeah. All right. So I got a full image of it. I read this couple of paragraphs. I got a full. But yeah, no. So what's the question in relation to Varys?
But now you do. I know you. I see you putting it up on Twitter and things. You're
Now
listening
I've read
through on the
everything.
books. So
I've read them through 6 times.
So
I hope that gets put across in my videos.
Absolutely, and I think it does. What I would love to know. So the Callie Summers is saying, has there ever been a point in the books where anyone has got any kind of verification about Varys being a eunuch? As in, he claims this, but I can't remember any. But
so okay, so God usually, even though it's very much a patriarchy and it's a chauvinist society where it's okay to be, we'll just, to put it lightly, be mean to women. When you get Cersei's POV, you very much realize that, oh my God, she thinks like a dude. She thinks like a bro, is what I call it. Like she's very much got bro humor, right? What she finds funny is sadistic and it's crazy, right? So she gives us the idea that men with penises act a certain way, and she is very resentful of that, to the point where she wishes she had one. Like Cersei is transgender for sure. Cersei's definitely transgender, right? So Varys, the way that he acts, sort of like, I keep going back to Perfume Seneschal, even though that's not even really what he is, but he kind of is. He's like this perfumed dude who's very unassuming. He shaves his head. It could be because he's Targaryen and he wants to hide the platinum, silver, gold hair, right? But it could also be because he's a mummer and he doesn't want people to know if he ever has to grow his hair out, what his true hair color. I don't know. It hasn't. And just like with Theon, the TV show ran with it. Theon is not missing his penis at all. He's not. It's never explicitly said. And when Yara and Balon get it's a piece of skin. It's not Theon's penis, right? That never happens. That never happened. Dan and Dave ran with that. So Varys very much could have his penis. And the reason why is because he's covering up some kind of crazy massive secret. And it ties into him shaving his head. And it's because he tells that story like, oh yeah, my penis got tossed into the fire. So yeah, I'm never a threat. I don't have any titles. I don't have any lands. I'm this guy who just knows a bunch of secrets. That's my trade. I just know secrets. I'm not a threat, but I actually am, because I know your secrets, right? He literally is a pirate of information. You know what I mean? So that's kind of how he makes his way. I wouldn't be surprised if he doesn't have a penis. Long story short, I would not be surprised if he actually does. I mean, like I wouldn't be surprised if he doesn't have one, and I wouldn't be surprised if he does, because someone like him has to be motivated some way. And if he doesn't want like what most men want in Westeros, and then, like if he doesn't want that, then his goal and drive has to be his house, right? And if he can't provide heirs for his house, maybe his motivation is putting someone from his blood on the throne. But I don't agree that Aegon is still Aegon, even if he's not Rhaegar's son and he's a Blackfire. He's still a Targaryen. He's still descended from the Targaryens, and he's honestly really cool.
He is. And really cool. Just on the Varys thing, a few people there saying Varys's greatest trick is convincing everyone he's not a Blackfire, which is an interesting. I'm not going to go all the way down that route, but I would, just in terms of where George R. R. Martin's thinking might have been when we first meet Varys. There are 2 moments when in that chapter. This is from Kat's perspective, Catelyn's perspective, who George R. R. Martin writes. It didn't come across as strongly on the show, but he writes her as almost always the cleverest person in the room. The amount of times that we just see her being clever. Tyrion thinks, wow, she's outfoxed me, she's outthought me. She's there. The amount of times when Ned's thinking about something and she's literally going, he'll catch up in a bit. I'll give him some time.
Okay.
I've figured it out, and he'll get there. But she, a couple of times, went through her perspective. We get with Varys is that he's described as being bald as an egg, which is of very, we know Duncan Aegon is a Targaryen name. And then we get this, the Red Keep's got lots of secret passages and everything, and only the Targaryens know about them. And then it's like, and here's Varys. He knows all about the hidden passages in the Red Keep. And it's like, are you hinting that this guy's a Targaryen? I don't know. It's the hints are there if you look for them, but it's never made explicit. Sorry, I interrupted you when you were talking about Cat and Ned. Sorry, when you were about to say something about
Oh
Cat
yeah.
and Ned.
So you were saying she's the cleverest person. She often thinks she is. Ned is not. Ned is what Dunk thinks he is. Ned, Dunk the Lunk, think is a castle wall. Ned is very much like that. Like, I enjoy reading Ned's POV, but he doesn't make the best decisions. He's like what John starts to do. Some of the decisions John makes, right? So he lets all the wildlings in, and then he's also like, you can't marry Val, who's not a princess, even though you think she's a princess, even though I have a crush on her. And he doesn't realize that. Like, a grown man would be like, oh, I have feelings for her. That's why I don't want to allow her. Also, it's, you could say it's like, she doesn't want to marry this person, but also she could fend her for herself. John feels the right that he still needs to protect her, right? That's little boys. That's what little boys think, right? So, what were we just talking about? I'm pulling from too many. Okay, yes. So Catelyn is the cleverest person when she's dealing with certain people, but not with Tyrion. Tyrion can match her wit like right on, because Tyrion, like, I was just listening to this before we started. Tyrion fighting, or not Tyrion, right? Bronn fighting for Tyrion in the Vale. Like, Catelyn watching the whole thing and thinking like, oh, like, she notices Tyrion moving a certain way, and she's like, oh yeah, he's doing that because she just feels like she has everything figured out, and that's not the case. And even though she learns quickly, right? She learns with Peter Baelish. She thinks of how the first time she hadn't seen him was since he almost got killed as a kid, and then when she shows up in King's Landing, he summons for her and sends for her to Brothel, right? She thinks about that, and she thinks Peter's going to be a certain way, like the boy that loved me, but no, Peter is not the same person, and he very much has more power than arguably Ned in the city, and she has no idea that he's that into King's Landing. So she is clever, but it depends on who she's matching wits with. I'm not saying Littlefinger's clever. I want a POV from Littlefinger before I say that, but I don't think I just have a problem with that. And the only reason why is because Catelyn on the show was so mean to Jon Snow, right? And then you have people that'll, like, when we're doing live streams, I have people on and they'll do, or you or whoever, right? I'll watch something and I'll see someone makes really good points about why Catelyn sucks. And then that bias will stick with me. And then when I'm reading her POV, I'm looking for ways to figure out why she sucks. But even though that's not the case, and you weren't doing that when you're reading her POV, you thought she was very clever. I do too. I'm just saying, it's just, that's all I wanted to say was when you said she's the most clever person.
Well, not necessarily the most. He writes her as often the cleverest person in the room. I could give other examples. I won't, because with otherwise I could talk about Cat for ages. She is very clever in some ways, in other ways that she has some very clear blind spots. I think that's probably fair to say.
She's probably the smartest or second smartest. I agree. I just want to, you know how when someone says something, you feel like you can make a contrary point to it. That's kind of what that was. I agree. Catelyn is very smart. It's specifically, and this last thing I want to say on it is, when she says the boys should listen to their mom, and then she looks at Renly and she's like, these are the Knights of Summer. They have green on them. You know what I mean? Like, not verbatim. She doesn't say that exactly, but that she's very much right. She's very right. That's
okay.
Exactly
with that, I think I'm going to start wrapping this one up. As I said, we could have gone into Ned and Cat for quite a while, I suspect. Why don't you just remind everyone where they can find you on the internet?
Right. So on here on YouTube, check out Sir Hunt's reviews. And me and Robert have actually done a couple streams. So if you want to watch our Game of Thrones ones, just go and type in Sir Hunt's in Deep Geek, and we've done a couple like collaborations on each other's channel. But yeah, I usually do a couple videos per episode. I'll break it down, and then I'll try to do like a promo. You know what I mean? And then a couple theories based on the episode. But yeah, you can find me Sir Hunt's reviews.
Excellent. I'm going to make you disappear for just one moment. I'll bring you back soon because I want to point at things. If you're watching back a bit later, appearing somewhere around here in a moment, it's going to be a link to some other live streams that I've done. Appearing somewhere around here in a moment is going to be a link to my Patreon. Patreon is the best way to support this channel if you wish to do so. There will be an episode breakdown coming for you tomorrow, and then also I'm going to have a couple of other videos about House of the Dragon and the lore and background and history of George R. R. Martin's world coming out over the next few days as well. Trying to keep up the pace on getting these videos out. But that's all for this time. Mark, thank you so much. You've been a fantastic, really thought-provoking guest as well, which is exactly what I knew you were going to be. And thank you in the chat. Thank you, moderators. And if you have been donating, again, thank you very much. I hugely appreciate it. It's a worthwhile cause. If you're watching this back a little bit later, there should probably still somewhere be a link to so you can still donate. Okay, that's it for this time. I will see you again on Thursday for my next live stream. Take care, everyone. I shall see you soon.